Please rise. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic which stands one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Please be seated. Welcome all to the Township of Old Bridge Zoning Board of Adjustment meeting, February 2, 2023. Adequate notice of this meeting of the Old Bridge Township Zoning Board of Adjustment has been provided in accordance with the Open Public Meetings Act at least 48 hours prior to the commencement of this meeting by primarily posting in the municipal complex an agenda giving the time, the date, the location of this meeting, also by mailing such announcement to the Home News and Tribune, filing such announcement with the municipal clerk, and posting it on the municipal website. Ms. C., could we have a roll call, please?
Chairman Sullivan.
Here.
Mr. Connor.
Here.
Mr. Stoner.
Here.
Ms. Chevalier is absent. Mr. Scogno.
Here.
Ms. Andrews. Here. Ms. Testaverde.
Here.
Mr. Izzo.
Here.
Mr. Dasty. Here. Ms. Sawant.
Here.
Mr. Dargy.
Present.
Mr. Proska.
Here.
Mr. Hart. And myself, Ms. C. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Just as a couple housekeeping issues, I'm sure everyone here in the room has a phone. Please mute it so it does not interrupt the testimony. We are being televised on OBT TV Channel 15. This is also simultaneously being televised on YouTube Live. You can see that meeting at a later date if you wish to refer back to it. We do have hours for operation here for the protocols of our meeting. We will not accept any new witnesses after 10 p.m. We tried to institute this to ensure that everybody gets out of here at a proper time. We still have to allow for, in applications, for the public portion, and sometimes that gets a little lengthy. So I would advise the attorneys, and they already know, please try to get your witnesses on before 10 o'clock, should we happen to have to go that late. We have a lot of housekeeping issues on the early agenda. We're going to have 3 applications this evening. They will come after we do the business, some resolution business and adoptions. So having said that, I'm going to move on. The first adoption, this is going to be for the 2023 Zoning Board of Adjustment Rules and Regs. Ms. Sawant, are we going to introduce the new addition?
Yes, we are. There was just one change, and it was related to the special meetings because the language wasn't clear. So I think that's all, but otherwise they're good too.
Okay. Board members, and that would be on page 6 of 27 in your rules and regs, the amendment dated February 2, 2023. In addition to the foregoing, applicants may request a special meeting to be scheduled for public hearing or on a application upon written request submitted to the zoning board, the determination of the availability of the zoning board members, and payment of the applicable fee pursuant to section 250-105B1. That's the only addition that's going to be. Is there any questions? Someone want to move that addition, the amendment for adoption?
Scogno, move it.
Okay. It's Mr. Connor and Mr. Scogno. Roll call, please, on the amendment.
Mr. Connor.
Yes.
Mr. Stoner.
Yes.
Mr. Scogno.
Yes.
Ms. Andrews.
Yes.
Ms. Testaverde.
Yes.
Mr. Izzo.
Yes.
Chairman Sullivan.
Yes. Now, board members, as to the adoption of the minutes for, the rules and regs for 2023. Someone move that? I will. Is there a second?
Second, Scogno. I'm sorry.
I think Mr. Scogno has the second on that. Roll call, please, as to adoption of the rules and regs.
Mr. Connor.
Yes.
Mr. Stoner.
Yes.
Mr. Scogno.
Yes.
Ms. Andrews.
Yes.
Ms. Testaverde.
Yes.
Mr. Izzo.
Yes.
Chairman Sullivan.
Yes. Item number 4 on the agenda this evening is resolutions. The board, as most boards do, find it necessary to have consulting professionals in the event of conflicts of interest. So each year, boards appoint at the reorganization meeting, which occurred last month, various boards, planning consultant, engineering consultant, traffic consultants, in the event that that conflict does take place, and they are needed. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to read into the record each of the individual identities of the businesses and then ask for the board's approval for the resolution. They've already been approved by the board. Now it's by resolution. So board members, the first one is for the board attorney. That's Dasty and Associates, PC. Someone move that resolution, please. Andrews, is there a second? Sullivan, roll call, please.
Mr. Connor,
Yes.
Mr. Stoner,
Yes.
Mr. Scogno,
Yes.
Ms. Andrews,
Yes.
Ms. Testaverde,
Yes.
Mr. Izzo,
Yes.
Chairman Sullivan.
Yes. The next would be the planning consultants, and there are 4 of them that were approved. This would be for resolution. Number 1, Environmental Resolutions, Inc. Number 2, CME Associates. Number 3, Remington and Vernick Engineers. And number 4, Harbor Consultants. Would someone move the resolution?
Connor, I'll move it.
Is there a second?
Second Stoner?
Roll call, please.
Mr. Connor,
Yes.
Mr. Stoner,
Yes.
Mr. Scogno,
Yes.
Ms. Andrews,
Yes.
Ms. Testaverde,
Yes.
Mr. Izzo,
Yes.
Chairman Sullivan.
Yes. The next category would be engineering consultants. To be light. And there's a bright light on the engineering consultants here, so it's, number 1 is the Environmental Resolutions, Inc., number 2, CME Associates, and number 3, Harbor Consultants. Would someone move the engineering consultants, please, for resolution?
Testaverde. I'll move.
Is there a second?
Second Scogno?
Roll call, please.
Mr. Connor,
Yes.
Mr. Stoner,
Yes.
Mr. Scogno,
Yes.
Ms. Andrews, Ms. Testaverde,
Yes.
Mr. Izzo,
Yes.
Chairman Sullivan.
Yes. Next category is traffic consultants. There's 3, Environmental Resolutions, Inc., CME Associates, and Rose Consulting Services. Someone move those for resolution.
Connor, I'll move it.
Roll call, please.
Mr. Connor,
Yes.
Mr. Stoner,
Yes.
Mr. Scogno,
Yes.
Ms. Andrews,
Yes.
Ms. Testaverde,
Yes.
Mr. Izzo,
Yes.
Chairman Sullivan.
Yes. The final category is forestry consultant. That's Chestnut AFS, also known as Gary Lavallo. Would someone move that consultant resolution?
Move it Scogno?
Is there a second?
Second, Connor.
Roll call, please.
Mr. Connor,
Yes.
Mr. Stoner,
Yes.
Mr. Scogno,
Yes.
Ms. Andrews,
Yes.
Ms. Testaverde,
Yes.
Mr. Izzo,
Yes.
Chairman Sullivan.
Yes. All right, we'll move on to resolution of applications. This is where Mr. Dasty gets to talk. First one is 19-2022Z. It's Currit Capitia. It was a D variance. Mr. Dasty.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This resolution memorializes the D4 variance application for Mr. Capitia. The applicant proposes a one-story addition to the rear of the existing two-story single-family home. The existing story dwelling is 2,364 square feet. The proposed one-story addition is 623 square feet. The property is located in the R-20 low-medium density residential zone. The applicant provided unrefuted testimony in support of the application. The variance can be granted without a substantial detriment to the public good and not impair the intent of the zone plan or zoning ordinance. There was also a bulk variance, which is an existing nonconformity. It was that's the maximum floor area ratio. That was the only part of the application. It was heard and approved on July the 5th, 2023, and the memorializing resolution is before you now.
Thank you, Mr. Dasty. Board members, you've heard the resolution, so we'll move it for adoption, please.
Connor, I'll move it.
Is there a second?
Second Scogno?
Roll call, please.
Mr. Connor,
Yes.
Mr. Stoner,
Yes.
Mr. Scogno,
Yes.
Ms. Andrews,
Yes.
Ms. Testaverde,
Yes.
Mr. Izzo,
Yes.
Chairman Sullivan.
Yes. The second one is 43-22Z, Benjamin and Camilla Spinelli. It's a D variance application.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This matter is before the board on last year, December 15th, 2022. The applicants filed an application for a D2 use variance for 3964 Old Bridge, Matawan Road. The application was before the board to put forth an addition of their two-story single-family dwelling. The applicant testified that they were seeking their variance relief in order to provide an additional room for the applicant's elderly parents. The addition itself would total 831 square feet. There was unrefuted testimony provided, professional planning testimony provided in support of the application. The board found that the variance could be granted without a substantial detriment to the public good and would not impair the zone plan or zoning ordinance. And resolution before you memorializes that approval from December 15th.
Thank you, Mr. Dasty. Board members, you've heard it. Someone want to move it for adoption?
Move it, Scogno.
Is there a second?
Second.
Andrews, seconds. Roll call, please.
Mr. Connor?
Yes.
Mr. Stoner?
Yes.
Mr. Scogno?
Yes.
Ms. Andrews? Ms. Testaverde?
Yes.
Mr. Izzo?
Yes.
Chairman Sullivan?
Yes. 49-22Z, Joseph Panetta, C variance. Mr. Dasty.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This matter also was before the board on December 15th. The applicant filed an application for a property known as 17 Jupiter Court in Old Bridge, Block 4000.16, Lot 39. The applicant was seeking to install a gazebo in the rear of the property adjacent to the pool, and which had already been installed, but they were unaware that a permit was required. The applicant was before the board seeking bulk variance relief for a 13 foot by 13 foot gazebo in the rear of the property, as well as a side yard setback of 10 feet, where 10 feet is required, 13.5 feet was proposed and existing. The applicant provided testimony before the board that due to the unique shape of the lot, hardship existed and a C variance relief was necessary. The board granted the bulk variance relief on December 15, 2022, and the resolution before you memorializes that adoption and approval.
Thank you, Mr. Dasty. Board members, you've heard the resolution. Someone move it for adoption, please.
I'll move it. Stoner.
Scogno, second.
Mr. Stoner, Mr. Scogno, roll call, please.
Mr. Connor?
Yes.
Mr. Stoner?
Yes.
Mr. Scogno?
Yes.
Ms. Andrews?
Yes.
Ms. Testaverde?
Yes.
Mr. Izzo?
Yes.
Chairman Sullivan?
Yes. And the last resolution will be 50-2022Z, Slawomir Kozlowski, C variance. Mr. Dasty.
Mr. Chairman, I appreciate you taking that chance on the name, sir. So this matter was also from December 15, 2022. The applicant was before the board seeking bulk variance relief to improve the front entrance of his home, to have an enclosed carport, to provide a roof over the existing terrace, and in addition to the rear side of the property for additional living space. The applicant testified that the bulk variance relief was necessary because of the unique shape of the lot, and the approval sought would certainly benefit not only his property, but also the neighborhood. The board found that the bulk variance hardship was criteria were met, and the memorializing resolution before you conforms that approval.
Thank you, Mr. Dasty. Board members, you've heard it. Someone going to move it for adoption, please?
I'll move it. Connor?
Is there a second?
Second. Stoner.
Moved in second. Roll call, please.
Mr. Connor?
Yes.
Mr. Stoner?
Yes.
Mr. Scogno?
Yes.
Ms. Andrews?
Yes.
Ms. Testaverde?
Yes.
Mr. Izzo?
Yes.
Chairman Sullivan?
Yes, and I apologize to the applicant if I mispronounced the name. Moves us on to completeness waiver, and we have one this evening. It's 53-20.
Chairman Sullivan, before we move on to that, could we do the 2 sets of minutes that were added
Oh,
to
sure.
the agenda?
The ones you wrote on here for me to do that I skipped right over.
No problem.
Okay. Board members, there's 2 minutes for adoption. We'll do them individually. November 3, 2022. Hopefully everyone's had a chance to review them. Absent any comments or questions or suggestions for additions or deletions, I'd ask someone to move them for adoption. I will. Is there a second?
Connor, second.
Thank you. Roll call, please.
Mr. Connor?
Yes.
Mr. Stoner?
Yes.
Mr. Scogno?
Yes.
Ms. Andrews?
I was absent.
Ms. Testaverde?
Yes.
Mr. Izzo?
Yes.
Chairman Sullivan?
Yes. Board members, the second one is December 1, 2022. The same applies. Hopefully there's no questions or comments. Seeing none, someone move them, please, for adoption.
Connor, I'll move it.
Is there a second?
Second. Stoner.
Roll call, please.
Mr. Connor?
Yes.
Mr. Stoner?
Yes.
Mr. Scogno?
Yes.
Ms. Andrews?
Yes.
Ms. Testaverde?
Yes.
Mr. Izzo?
Yes.
Chairman Sullivan?
Yes, and I apologize to Ms. C for not reading what you wrote on here for me.
No problem.
Now we'll go over to completeness waiver, and there's one this evening. It's 2022Z, Grayson Road Holdings, LLC. It's in the Regional Commercial Shopping CR zones. It's Block 5000, Lot 3. It's located 1030 Route 9, outdoor advertising LED sign requiring major preliminary and final site plan with the variance. Most people would know that as the Gateway Shopping Center on the southbound side of Route 9. I will read the memo authored by Ms. Sawant, the planner. However, it contains 60 items that I counted, I believe, on here. And I'm not going to read each one of them in. It is a matter of record. You will get the gist of what's going on when I read this memo. Ms. Sawant opines the subject property, also known as Block 5000, Lot 3, is located at 1030 US 9 in the Regional Commercial Shopping Zone. The property contains a shopping center, Gateway Shopping Center, with associated parking. There is an outdoor advertising billboard located at the shopping center's southernmost exit, adjacent to Dunkin' Donuts. The applicant is seeking a D1 use variance relief and major preliminary and final site plan approval to change the outdoor advertising sign to LED display. The office has reviewed the waiver request by the applicant for the following. There's then a list of 60 of them. It's not unusual, so don't be alarmed. After we get through those 60, Ms. Sawant continues. In 2016, then the applicant and owner, Premier Media, LLC, filed an application with the zoning board to construct an outdoor advertising billboard on the southbound side of US Highway 9, adjacent to the southernmost driveway of the Gateway Shopping Center. Billboards are not permitted in the CR zone, and therefore a D1 use variance relief was required. The board denied the application for the D1 use variance. Premier Media, LLC, challenged the board's decision and so filed a lawsuit in the Superior Court of New Jersey. In 2018, Premier Media, LLC, and the board settled the matter pursuant to a court order. The board granted the D1 use variance, bulk variances, and preliminary and final site plan approval per the recommendations contained in the court order. One term of the approval stated, quote, Premier Media, LLC, agrees not to seek approval to modify the same, parentheses, outdoor advertising sign, close parentheses, to an LED display. Provided, however, that nothing herein shall prevent a future owner of the outdoor advertising sign from applying to the Township of Old Bridge or the board for approval to change the outdoor advertising sign to an LED display. The approved static display sign has been constructed and is operational. The applicant and the current owner, Grayson Road Holdings LLC, now proposes to change the outdoor advertising sign to an LED sign. The applicant proposes to change the sign from a static display to an LED display and therefore requests numerous waivers. Those were the 60. Our office recommends that all items listed above be waived except for the following, and these I will read. Item 9, property survey and plot showing existing and proposed structures and dimensions of front, side, and rear yards. Item 13, North Point, written and graphic scales. Item 15, area of tract and area to be developed to the nearest 10th acre. Item 16, all tract data, bearings, distances, radii, curve data, areas of lots. Item 20, location, disposition of existing structures. Item 22, proof of payment of taxes. Item 23, symbols for existing and proposed items, parentheses, hydrants, monuments, utilities, plantings, signs, walkways, elevations, closed parentheses. And item 30A, block and lot number and property line of all parcels. The applicant shall submit a property survey and proof of payment of taxes and has indicated that they would provide same to the planning department office. Applicant should be advised that the waiving of any completeness items does not constitute approval of any portion of the application, and that any information found to be necessary during the review process must be supplied. Peter Klauser is the representing the applicant. Mr. Klauser.
Good evening, Mr. Chair, members of the board, and your professional staff, and members of the public. For the record, Peter Klauser with the firm Heilbron Pape, applicant. Mr. Chair, when I filed the application, I filed it as a letter application requesting an amendment to the settlement agreement. With Ms. Sawant's guidance, she suggested that I ask for the variance relief as part of it, and also, out of an abundance of caution, ask for a site plan. Just in the event that if the board should approve the modification, that we get to building and the building department gives us an issue with it. There is no change to the footprint of the sign. I believe the service, the electrical service somewhere along the pole gets increased to support the LED, and obviously the face would be changed to the LED. So that may raise a question with the building department that a site plan is necessary. What I'm essentially asking for is a waiver of site plan, but I think Ms. Swan indicated to me maybe sort of done away with that and are rather asking for waivers from the particular site plan requirements. So that's why there's such a long list. This is built, it's operational, I'm sure everyone has seen it, it's there, nothing is changing except for the sign face itself. I read this report, I agree to submit the survey. The proof of payment of taxes probably didn't go in because I filed it as a letter application, so I wasn't following the normal checklist. More than glad to provide that. That's not an issue. In fact, I found the surveys from when the original application was in our files in our basement from 2016. So I'll send those in, see if that has all the information that your professionals need. So I would ask that the waivers be granted. The application will not be deemed complete now. I'll have to submit the survey and the proof of taxes, which I will do. And then I think internally it'll be deemed complete and we'll get on a hearing date. And the board denied the application. I'll take the opportunity to say that denied it by voting in favor of it 4-3. But because of our laws, that's technically a denial.
I do recall the application.
Yeah.
Ms. Swan?
I have nothing further to add.
Okay, board members, some of you were here then, some of you weren't. Anybody sitting in the audience, I'm sure you've seen this billboard. It's southbound, just at the Gateway Shopping Center. It's probably closer to the Dunkin' Donuts. It is already there. They're not asking to put one up. They're asking to change the static to an LED. Board members, any questions that you want to ask Mr. Clauser or the planner?
Mr. Clauser, the LED is a much brighter light than what's up the other participants within that mall. So how is that going to stand out compared to the others? It's going to be so much brighter as you approach it on the highway or whatever. I mean, is that some consideration you had?
Sure.
LED is,
I think that's a question for the actual application, not for the waiver.
Yeah, and Leon, those are questions we'll be able to ask when they come back for the actual variance. All that's here now is really administrative in nature. It just to waive a couple of the requirements that VENA has recommended be waived. So I think that question is better directed for Mr. Clauser's client or his professional once they come back to us after you vote on the waiver.
understood, thank you.
Yeah, because the attorney really doesn't testify. He's just bringing the administrative.
But I'm
issues to
glad
us.
you asked it because I'll make sure we're ready to answer that
Hey,
question.
He'll write that
I
down.
gave you a heads up.
Them off.
You will write that
Tipped
down.
them off.
Okay, anything else, Mr. Clausen?
No, that's
Anybody
it.
else on the board? Okay, you've heard the request for the waiver. Is someone in favor of moving it? I will. Is there a second? Andrew seconds. Roll call, please, as to the waiver, as written.
Mr. Connor,
Yes.
Mr. Stoner,
Yes.
Mr. Scogno,
Yes.
Ms. Andrews,
Yes.
Ms. Testaverde,
Yes.
Mr. Izzo,
Yes.
Chairman Sullivan.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Clausen.
Thank you all. See you in a little bit.
Moving along. There are 6, if you have an agenda and you're holding an agenda, there are 6 applications on there. Only 3 of them are going to be heard this evening. For those who are here, I'm going to tell you that the first 3 that I'm going to read into the record, they're not going to be heard tonight. Matter of fact, one's not going to be heard at all because they're withdrawing it. So if you're here on those, no need to sit around. If you're here on other matters, those are the final 3. When we get to them, we'll go in order as they are on the agenda. The first one I'm going to read into the record is 24-2021Z. The application is called Steve Martin. It's in the, excuse me, General Office Zone OG2. It's located Block 9000, Lot 25, 2298 Route 9 South, for a proposed used car dealership and auto repair. Mr. Vitiello's not here, right? No, I wouldn't think not. Major preliminary and final site plan with D variance. The applicant proposes to use the existing building for a used car dealership and the attached garage for an auto repair and maintenance. The application also proposes expansion of the gravel parking area for vehicle storage and upgrades to the lighting and landscaping. All of that is not necessary because the applicant has requested that this application be withdrawn with prejudice, which means they can't bring it back again. Am I correct?
You are correct.
Okay. So that matter, if you're familiar with it, it's located at, right across from, it's right next to Fairleigh Lane. So where the old golf course was, the shop right across the street, there's a building there. That's the one I'm referring to. You have without, okay, without prejudice. Okay. So that matter will not be heard. and will be off our calendar. The second one is 52-2022Z. It's Louis Grosvenor. That's the medium-high-density residential zone R5, located Block 9, Lot 261. The actual location is 261 Shoreland Circle for a single-family home. Require C and D variances. That matter is going to be adjourned because there's a request for an adjournment by the applicant. Public hearing for this application has been scheduled to continue on March 2nd, 2023, without further notice. So if you're here on that matter, it will be on our calendar next month. There'll be no further notice. And finally, the matter that will not be heard this evening, 07-2022Z B&R Gas, Inc. This is the EDO zone, EDO 1, block 26021, lot 81, 957 Englishtown Road, for major preliminary and final site plan with C and D variance. This is a gas station that you're probably familiar with as you go down Englishtown Road on the other side of Route 18. Applicant proposes site improvements to the existing gasoline station, including a canopy over the existing pump station, a new refuse enclosure, and restriping of the parking area. That matter, the applicant has made a request for an adjournment. The public hearing for this application has also been scheduled for March 2, 2023, without further notice. So if you're here on that matter, not tonight, next month. The following three are going to be heard this evening. I'll call them in order as they are on the agenda. The first application for the evening is 52-2021Z, RD Management Corporation. This is the EDO 3, block 16004, lot 53. Frontage on Route 18 and Foxborough Drive, multi-family residential community, major preliminary and final site plan with C and D variances. Mr. Kenneth Pape, Esquire, representing the applicant. Is Mr. Pape here? Oh, you moved. And before you start, Mr. Pape, I would just, seeing as you you and Mr. Klaus are behind you have the only applications this evening. I know it's fair to share, but we have to cut the time, so it's 8 o'clock right now. You have one, he has two. I don't know how you guys are going to handle that, but I would like to get all three of the applications on the record this evening. So you can begin.
I will do so promptly. Mr. Chairman, board members, board professionals, public, good evening. Kenneth Pape of the Heilbron Pape. This is a continued public hearing on the application of RD Management Corp. And I will not repeat what you just read completely into the record. I have one administrative item before we move forward, and that is the substantive presentation of this application took place at the hearings of September 15th and December 1st. And if the record could reflect those board members who were not present at those hearings and have qualified so that we know how many qualified members are with us this evening.
That is correct, Mr. Pape. Ms. C has the certifications that were signed by the members that were not here. I believe it was Mr. Izzo, Mr.
Will we check the attendance record for the last one?
Mr. Scogno, Mr. Izzo, and Ms. Testaverde.
Ms. Tesseros. So all three members have reviewed the transcripts and they signed affidavits to that effect this evening.
To all who did so, thank you. This is, so there are, if someone could do the math with me, there are 7 qualified board members.
Yes, there are.
this evening.
Correct.
Thank you all. This is the third public hearing. At the conclusion of the second public hearing on December 1st, the board professionals, and the public commented on the application that had been presented. And this is an application to construct one building with 120 apartments. Those 120 apartments, 15% are proposed to be affordable and would be fully conformant with the UHAC requirements of 1, 2, and 3 bedrooms for affordables. We had gone through all of the physical elements of the plan, describing to you the landscaping, the lighting, the drainage, the grading, and at the conclusion of the evening, the public and the board's professionals all seem to point to 3 items that were not satisfactory with the actual design. The first of those was the driveway connection to Foxborough Drive. We took it off. There is no driveway connection to Foxborough Drive. There's not at all. And that area has been closed off and landscaped. We'll present that to you through the testimony of Mr. Pucci, and then we'll follow that with Mr. Trunco, who re-landscaped the site for us. The second was that the neighbors behind us identified a wet soils condition. Our clients didn't create it, and it wasn't on our client's property. But our clients directed their engineer to see if he could solve the problem. And he has created a subsurface water collection system that wicks the water from that area and takes it below ground to the stream. And that's on our plan. That is a drainage correction to the neighborhood, not required for our project at all, and not solving anything that we created, just something that's there. And the third one was a little easier, and that was a fence. We were asked to put a separating fence, and that fence is there. I'm going to ask that we begin with Mr. Michael Pucci, who submitted those revised plans, to describe them to you and place those on the record. And then, in order to do that wicking system, we had to remove some of the vegetation between our project and the neighbors behind us. Had to take that down so that we could grade it and put the system in. Mr. Trunco, the landscape architect, has reforested that whole area. So we have a replacement, I'm going to call it a replacement forest. The whole back has all been over-landscaped around the drainage system that was designed by Mr. Pucci. And the third witness that I will call this evening is Mr. John Ray, the traffic engineer. I'm going to ask if he would confirm on the record that the integrity of the on-site circulation, the ability to fight fires, and the connectivity of this project to the adjacent highway system is in no way compromised by us losing that driveway. Maybe there's a marketing element that was affected, but not a safety element. I'm going to ask Mr. Ray to speak to that point. Those, Mr. Chair, are the witnesses that we intend to present to you. With your permission, we'll move right into that.
Absolutely.
Thank you. Mr. Pucci is a professional engineer. His credentials are on the record. He has been sworn, and he remains under oath. Mr. Attorney, you can remind him, I'll remind him, you're under oath, and your testimony continues to be under oath. I'm going to ask if you could identify to the board the exhibit that you created for tonight's presentation. We can ask Ms. C to call it up and put it on the screen and take us through the revisions.
That would be, I believe it's called 04. Perfect.
Mr. Pape, is this going to be marked as a new exhibit?
A11, I believe.
Let's see. Higher than that.
Electronically pre-marked as A11.
Okay. So
Title block? I don't see it, but if you could tell us what the title block.
title block of this,
Ace 16, gentlemen.
we're up to 15. Wow.
Ace 16, A16.
Thank you.
Okay, so this is titled the preliminary and final site plan. This is actually the, I believe, 4th or 5th sheet in the site plan set that was submitted as part of the revised plans for the project. And if I could ask Ms. Z, now that we've identified the title block, to just push the picture down a little
There
bit.
we go. A little more. A little more.
Oh, no, it'll get there. It just has to regenerate.
There we go.
So the important point here, as Mr. Pape just described to you, is that the project in the upper left-hand corner here, this driveway used to continue out to Foxborough Drive. And in one iteration, it came from the bottom and turned. In the second iteration, it came across the back and connected. In either case, there is no connection. It is completely eliminated. And now what will happen is the driveway across the back of the building will just connect to the driveway in the front of the building with a simple radius, no connection out to Foxborough Drive. Therefore, no worries about the truck turning movements of any vehicle, single unit truck, WB50, anything, getting out onto Foxborough Drive and going into the residential community.
If you could describe the stormwater element that you've added.
To do that, I'm going to ask Ms. Z to put in the next sheet. I believe if this was 04, it would be called 05. Okay, and the title block on that will read preliminary and final grading plan. It's just the next sheet in the submitted plans that have been given to you as part of this revised application. And if I could ask you to slide back down. So the previous design has right across here part of the stormwater management system that has always been there. That is a biofiltration swale at the edge of the parking spaces that head to the northeast. Behind that, what we have now done is all these dark lines that form a V that point to the right in this area. That is actually a swale that on the surface gathers the water and has the water form a little swale or stream, if you will, down into our basin here. Now, we've also gone so far as to place this dark line that you see right across there I'm tracing. That dark line is an underdrain. So the center of this swale has been provided with porous material, and beneath that porous material, there is a pipe, a perforated pipe that will collect the groundwater that is in the area and will, as Mr. Pape used the engineering technical term, WIC, it will collect that groundwater as well as the surface water that will run from the backyards of the adjacent homes into the swale. All of that water will be collected and piped down into our detention basin at the southeasterly end of the project. Now, the water always got there on the surface. Now we're adding this underdrain with the perforated pipe to help grab any underground water, any change in groundwater, any high groundwater table, try and basically suck that water out of the soil and have it collect in a pipe down to the stormwater management system.
And if you could support the statements that I made, that this is not necessary to handle the stormwater conditions for our client site, and this is addressing a problem that exists, not caused or created by our client's use of his property.
Well, that is absolutely correct. The prior stormwater report addressed everything that was necessary for the project and was in full compliance with your ordinance and state stormwater management regulations. This addition of this area back here, this swale and this underdrain, have nothing to do with the project site, but they are something that are beneficial to help drain this area, all the backyards that have a wet condition. And one of the, or maybe more than one of the neighbors had testified or stated that this area was full of debris and just mucky and swampy. So we're regrading it to provide a positive pitch away from the backyards of these homes, definitely draining it down into a defined swale and putting an underdrain to help drain the entire area, all for the benefit of the area of their backyards and the area that we were not previously going to touch. But now, as Mr. Pape described, we're going to clear out that area up there, put in this system, and then Mr. Tronco will speak after me, revegetate that, reforest it, so that all the screening that is desired is there after putting in a system to help draining.
And the fence, where did you place the fence?
So a fence was placed along the entire rear of the properties along Stone Ridge and even out to, I believe it's Ponderosa here. So we start at Foxborough Drive, even though this is an unoccupied lot, it's a township lot. There's a fence along that entire property line to this angle and down that entire property line to this point here.
What kind of a fence?
I believe it is a 6-foot solid fence. I believe in the comments I read it was cedar, but we have shown the location on this plan. Mr. Tronco has also shown it on the landscaping plan that he will show you, and the detail of that fence, I believe, is in his plan set.
And it's a fence on our client's property, and it will be our client's responsibility and obligation to maintain.
That is correct.
Mr. Chair, those are the 3 revisions that we've made to the plan. That's the testimony of Mr. Pucci. Addressing those 3 revisions, I would like to have Mr. Tronco identify how he re-landscaped the area that was disturbed to create the stormwater collection system, and I'm prepared to do so directly with your permission.
You want to see if the professionals
Sure,
have any
sure,
questions?
sure.
As a matter of housekeeping,
Go ahead.
the grading plan that I put up is now A17.
Thank you. Mr. Dargy?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Our office has reviewed this plan several times over the 4 submissions that have been made, and Mr. Pucci has previously provided the testimony in our review memo. Our most recent review memo is dated, it's a joint memo prepared by our office and the township planners, and dated February 1st. It's a amendment or revision to our previous memo. And the applicant has addressed just about all the comments that we had from an engineering perspective. With regard to the details, there are some outstanding comments. I've had a chance to speak to the applicant's professionals about our comments, and I'm satisfied that they'll be able to satisfactorily address those comments. The biggest change is, from an engineering perspective, is the swale and the under drain, which, you know, it's a balance you have to strike. The applicant was respecting that buffer in the past for the benefit of the screening. However, in order to solve some of the issues that the adjacent property owners brought to light during previous meetings, the applicant now needs to clear that area to construct the swale and construct an under drain, which will hopefully manage the adverse groundwater condition which exists on this property. I don't have any specific questions for Mr. Pucci. I'm happy to answer any questions the board may have, and of course, I'm here all night to answer any questions.
Appearing nightly here? This one?
I don't have any questions.
Board members, do you have anything? You're entitled to. Go right ahead.
It's the swell or the wick. You're building all of the homes. I'm going to go to Ponderosa for a second. If that neighborhood has the drainage for Ponderosa, now you're coming into the picture, your load of water added to Ponderosa, is that going to be detrimental to Ponderosa?
If I may.
Please.
Sure, I'm going to go first. All of the water on our site has been addressed in our prior testimony. All of the design on our site has been reviewed by your engineer and found to be correct. All of our water is going away from that residential community. This system that we're talking about this evening came as a result of the December 1st testimony of our neighbors and Mr. Pucci being creative and saying I can solve their problem. But our water is not going in that direction. Our water goes to the stream directly. We're not creating any water that's going anywhere near our neighbors.
Okay.
And now we're collecting their water and getting
And
that.
funneling it out.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you.
Anybody else? Mr. Scogno.
Mr. Donji, you did indicate that this is wetlands.
Yes. It's going to require permit. I apologize. I'll let you finish. Go ahead.
Yes.
We're
And
not
you-
in the wetlands.
Excuse me?
We're not in the wetlands.
That is in the wetlands.
Actually, I think
No, in the
Mr.
parcel.
Go ahead, Mr. Scogno. I think,
You indicated the parcel has wetlands.
yes, it does.
Okay. And you also indicated that the Economic Development Opportunity 3 zone is for non-residents construction.
That's what the zoning is, and Ms. Swan.
And that's our master plan.
Yes.
Thank you.
The wetlands, and there are wetlands actually in the area where the swale is, right, Mike? And you have to get a permit from DEP for that.
It's
Yeah.
just general permits from DEP.
Right, there is a permit required, so Mr. Scogno, you're absolutely correct. There are wetlands on the property, and the area where the applicant is now proposing to clear and construct that swale to manage the adverse groundwater condition, that's a wetland area, which kind of explains why there's an adverse groundwater condition. So that will require a permit from DEP, but that, should this board act favorably, the applicant would have to pursue.
And the EDO 3 represents 3 acres, although it's more than 3 acres, of which 9.3 they're planning to build on. The wetlands cover that.
Yeah, well, the wetlands doesn't, as far as the breakdown of how much of the property is wetlands and how much isn't.
They're going to be using 9.3 of that property.
I don't know the exact
acres.
area of the disturbance. What's your total area of disturbance, Mike, do you know?
The total size is
I don't know the total area
9.3.
disturbance off the top of my head.
Yeah, but the lot is 9.3 acres.
So, Mr. Scogno, the minimum lot area for ADO 3 is 3 acres.
Or more.
And it's the minimum required,
Right, I understand that.
and they are at 9.3.
Right, I understand that. The wetlands, how far is that into the 9.3?
Oh, as far as, yeah, I don't have that specific answer. I think Do you have an approximation, Mike?
If I were to give you a guess, I would say maybe an acre and a half or two between the isolated wetland that's in the back that we're talking about by this swale and some naturally occurring wetlands to the right behind the basin.
Thank you.
But to be clear, our zoning doesn't differentiate between wetland and non-wetland when they talk about minimum lot area. The minimum lot area size is basically how big the parcel is, regardless of wetlands or non-wetlands.
Thank you, Mr. Georgie. Mr. Plaska, do you have anything to?
No, I can wait till the traffic.
You gonna wait?
Sure. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Let's see if you want to jump in.
Thank you. With
I have
the-
nothing, so you want to go with your...
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Trunks?
Mr. Pucci, stay with us. Mr. Trunco, please join us. You can't go home. Mr. Trunco is our landscape architect. He also was sworn, his credentials shared, and his qualifications accepted. I remind you that you are under oath, and my understanding that you've prepared an exhibit that shows how this disturbed area will be re-landscaped. If you could, and we're at which exhibit?
Well, this is a color rendered site plan of the document set, so it's the landscape plan in the submitted set, color rendered.
Do we have a number?
It's A18, and that was part of the January 5
Yes,
submission. Is that accurate?
Yes. If you could direct the board's attention to the area that we're going to discuss, and then in detail describe the reforestation program that you show on this plan.
Sure, thank you. Okay, so everything above the chartreuse green line here is new vegetation. As we have indicated, that area, sorry about that. That area was all previously forested, so there was existing vegetation in this area. Anything below that chartreuse green area is landscape per the previous rendition of the plan. So within that area, due to the regrading and also the drainage improvements, we went with a twofold approach to the reforestation. First being the buffer has been planted with larger trees. We have planted shade trees, 19 of them, which range in size from 2.5 to 3-inch caliper, and also 3 to 3.5-inch caliper. There's 19 shade trees. In addition, there's 44 evergreen trees in that area, and they range from 8 to 10 foot in height to 10 to 12 foot in height. We like to provide two different size trees for the visual aspect of that. In addition, there are 98 shrubs, which are the real light items on the plan, peppered through there. And that completes pretty much the first fold of the reforestation. In addition to that, we have planted smaller material which will grow in and help to establish the forest. Those areas are shown in the dark green, these areas between the plantings. And in those areas, we have smaller material, 375 shrub, ornamental, and shade trees. And their sizes are 1 gallon containers, which is about a 5 to 6 foot tall plant. And then tubelings, which are kind of seedlings for trees, shrubs, and ornamental trees. So that's the two-tiered approach to the reforestation. So over time, this area will, revert back to a forest through succession.
All of the landscaping that you've designed is not inconsistent with the purposes of the stormwater system that Mr. Pucci just presented to the board.
No, it isn't. So that, again, that chartreuse green is pretty much the center of the swale. That's a seed mix that will tolerate wet conditions, and the water would flow pretty much in that area down to the to the basin.
And I noticed that you did a little patching of your landscaping where the old driveway went out to Foxborough, more landscaping consistent with the landscaping in that area.
Sure. So what we did there was continue the street trees, these three here, which would be a continuation of the street trees we have. And then we closed off the loop road with additional trees inside, parking lot type trees, and then also showed some ornamental trees in the lawn area.
Mr. Chairman, I have nothing further of Mr. Trunco on direct, and he is available to your professionals on the board.
Mr. Dargy?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Tronco, we didn't get a chance to speak. I spoke to Mr. Pucci about the engineering comments. Our review memo does have some comments regarding some suggestions and changes we would like to have made to the landscaping plan. I don't know if you've had a chance to review the memo.
Sure. I saw the couple comments. We don't have a problem with them. If the board would like me to go through those comments in detail, I can, but none of those comments are of concern.
You'd be able to
No
comply
doubt.
with those
We
comments?
could, yeah, we could address all those comments.
Okay.
Can and will.
Can and will.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, I don't have anything further for Mr. Tronco.
Mr. Watt?
I don't have any comments. I would just recommend that should the board act favorably on the application, that should be one of the conditions that the landscape architect works with our office to address those comments. That's it.
Okay. We've taken notice of Mr. Lavallo's report, right, as well?
Yes. Yep.
Sure.
From the last meeting.
Correct. Oh, yes. Well, this is dated November 28th.
Yes, and we were here December 1st. Yes, we accept.
Okay. Go to board members on my left. Questions for the witness?
May I ask, where is the exit on Foxborough Drive for the traffic?
There is none.
There is none.
Oh, you did not put one there?
We were asked to take it off.
You were asked to take it off and you did that?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And I noticed, what is it, 211 parking spaces? Is that what you indicated?
He's a landscape.
Yeah, I know that, but I'm referring to the landscaping where the cars are parked facing the residence.
Sure.
Yeah.
Again, that's a two-tiered approach. There's planting at the back of the parking spaces, shrubs and ornamental grasses, but then just beyond that, where the drainage swell comes back up, we have additional shrubs and shade trees.
And that'll be high enough for when someone pulls in with the lighting from the vehicles coming in projected towards the back.
So if we go even further, it's probably a 3 or 4 tiered approach because there's another level of shade trees. We have evergreen trees, shrubs, grasses, seed mixes.
And what are they, 8 foot?
And a guide rail. The trees are from 6 to 10 foot tall.
Well, trees, they lose their leaves and we can forget that.
8 to 12.
8 to 12 foot.
There's also a fence, right? A 6-foot-tall opaque fence.
Yes, and that's at the property line. Yep.
Fence on the property line, which is also a request of the applicant.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Anybody else?
Yeah, I have a question.
Go ahead, Mr. Stoner.
Whose responsibility is going to be to maintain those common grounds as far as the landscaping is concerned?
That'll all be maintained by the applicant.
It's the property owner. This is a rental apartment complex maintained by the property owner.
How many times a year?
How many? I don't have how many times a year. If you would like us to file a landscape maintenance plan, we can. We do have an obligation to file the operations and maintenance manual for all of the stormwater facilities. That has to be submitted to your, and it has already been submitted to your engineer. But if you'd like us to supplement it with a landscape plan, we can. Our client is a professional apartment owner throughout the state of New Jersey.
Anything else, Mr. Stoner?
No.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Anybody else? Ms. Andrews?
It's one way in, one way out?
Just one moment, I'm going to call John Ray, the traffic engineer.
Okay.
and
Thank you.
we'll save it for him. He just does the trees.
Anybody else? Back to you, Mr. Pape.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Trocco. Mr. Ray, if you would join us. So John Ray is our traffic engineer. His credentials are on the record. He was accepted as an expert in his field, and he is under oath. I remind you that you're under oath. Going to ask if you could begin by answering the question that was just asked from the dais. The means of ingress and egress, if you could identify where it is, identify how it functions, and comment on its adequacy.
Okay, the ingress and egress will be just a right-in, right-out driveway from and to the northbound lanes of Route 18. It is adequate to serve the 120 apartments. The New Jersey residential site improvement standards permit a residential project to have a single point of access as long as no more than 1,000 daily peak hour trips are generated. We have 120 units. Each unit generates about 6 daily trips, so we're 720. We're well under the 1,000 trip threshold, so it's acceptable. It meets the New Jersey residential site improvement standards.
I'm going to ask you another question, and that is, with the closure of the driveway to Foxborough, addressing our neighbors' requests, with that closure, do you as a traffic engineer envision that there is any compromise to the integrity of the on-site circulation? And the real question that I want you to answer is there any compromise from your professional perspective to the ability to fight fires by the fire department with that change?
Not in my opinion, and Mr. Hart is here, and I'm sure he will offer testimony at the end of the presentation by the applicant. We still have full circulation around the building. It's been designed to accommodate the fire and emergency vehicles, and there's no compromise to the safety of the on-site circulation.
It's a safe statement. Our client was reluctant to give up that driveway for a number of reasons, but from your perspective, traffic safety, firefighting ability, you're comfortable advising the board, in your opinion, there is no compromise?
There's no compromise. The applicant can live without it, and there will be no compromise to the overall safety of the on-site and off-site circulation.
I have nothing further of Mr. Ray. He is available to the board and the board's professionals at this time.
Mr. Dargy.
I don't have any questions for Mr. Ray.
Ms. Swan.
I don't have any questions.
Mr. Plaska.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So we had a chance to take a look at the new plan. We had some comments in the review letter. Just a few things, Mr. Ray. When there was an access to Foxborough, we had asked to better align that. So a bend was introduced internal to the parking area. We appreciate that. Now that Foxborough driveway is not on the plan, can the applicant investigate potentially removing that bend internal to the parking lot to provide a better kind of 90-degree bend in the parking lot? So top left on the plan.
Right in this area right here.
Correct. No issue
Mike?
with that.
We'll look at it and work with Mr. Dargy to do that.
Great.
Okay.
I appreciate
Yeah,
it.
that
That's
way
why I had to punt
we
that
can
to
pull
Mr.
the
Pucci.
parking a little bit further away from the rear property line there.
Yeah,
Exactly.
I see.
Yep. And then we just asked if the board were to act favorably on the application to submit an updated traffic study that reflects the site access
Okay.
with the removal of Foxborough Drive.
No
And then-
problem. We'll do that.
Great. And then also to work with the professionals and as well as Mr. Hart to investigate potentially closing the median opening that is on Foxborough Drive where the curb cut is, potentially closing that to have a full height curb or potentially pavers in that location.
I'm not sure that will be necessary. The median opening on Foxborough Drive may be there for another reason. It has nothing to do with the development of this property. I think it's maybe just to allow people to, if they come down into Foxborough Drive, make a U-turn. If they realize they've made a mistake, they don't want to be there or whatever. We're talking about the median opening on Foxborough Drive, which is there already, right? If I'm not mistaken.
Correct. I'm
Yeah.
just asking, would you be open to working with us to investigate if that should be closed or not?
I would want Mr. Hart's opinion on that as well, too. It does give traffic an opening and a possibility of making a U-turn. So we would but absolutely, we'll investigate that possibility. And if it turns out that that's something that the township desires, I'm sure we can accommodate it.
If it's the collective decision of fire, engineering, and you.
Right.
that is
Absolutely.
correct, that's not an issue.
Right.
Great.
I agree.
Thank you. That's everything, Mr. Chair.
Board members on my left. While you're thinking, I'll go over here on my right. Any questions?
What's the width of the driveway, the in and out driveway?
Give me one
Can it
second.
accommodate, heavy, large, big
His fire trucks.
vehicles?
Yeah,
They're at his fire trucks.
the entrance driveway.
That was my idea.
Yes, it can. The entrance driveway starts out at a dimension of 23 feet. It narrows down to 20. The width of the fire truck is 8.5 feet, so that's not an issue. And the exit driveway is 26 feet.
Thank you.
Now I'll go back to my left. Mr. Rizzo?
A size of this lot, is it okay to have only one in and out? I'm new at this, so I'm just.
Right.
I'm winging this.
Yes, it is. This goes back to the opening testimony that I gave. I had to check with the New Jersey residential site improvement standards to see whether one access point to and from the property was adequate. And there is a structure there. They allow up to 1,000 daily peak hour trips on a single point of access. We're going to be about 720. So we're below that threshold. So we meet the RSIS, the residential site improvement standards. And so the long and short of it is the answer is yes, it's adequate.
And if in the event of a blockage, an accident, anything by that entrance and exit, is there another way if the people had to leave? An emergency type thing, is there?
It's just the right in, right out driveway from it. That possibility was taken into consideration when the state developed the RSIS standards. So we meet the state standards. They thought about that when they limited the amount of traffic to 1,000 daily peak hour trips.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
It's worth noting, this building that's proposed is 100% fire suppressed. There's a complete, the entire building has a sprinkler system, every floor, every room.
You done, Mr. Rizzo?
Yes, I'm sorry.
It's a great point, and I'm going to go to the fire marshal. We're going to get his opinion, and then I'll weigh in.
Okay. Going back to the entrances, for us responding there, vehicles are going to be coming from Route 9 to Spring Valley, right into that entrance. Vehicles coming from the south. Coming down, we have a lot of buildings. We have nursing homes. We have an apartment building. All with, we have to go to the next light and turn around and go back in it. This entrance is not far from Spring Valley Road. Our vehicles change every traffic light we come to automatically for us. All the other intersections turn red. So we can do a quick left turn and get into the entrance. This building is the same as the one on 99 Bridge on Old Amboy Road, if you guys are familiar with it, behind the Wawa. It's identical. We drive around that with no problems at all. It is fully suppressed, where there's sprinklers throughout, there's hydrants throughout. Right down the street after the Ferry Road light, we have the Costello Building, Mon Manor, Reformed Church Home, all one way in, one way out. I'm not too concerned about the one way in, one way out, because the Foxborough Drive roadway as it is, would it get people out? Would I like them to put a temporary emergency gate and stone? Yeah, but the residents will probably say that's not going to work. Then people are going to use it. So what's the sense? We can get in and out of that driveway with no problem. They designed it around the size of the vehicles that we own. So I have no problem with losing that driveway at all. The centerpiece for that original Foxborough Drive, it was put in there for a reason probably 30 years ago. It does help if there's a way, if there is a block at the light, the people can get turned around and get back home, or if they forget something, they could turn around and go back home instead of going all the way up to the traffic light, and now you're really stuck there. So, I mean, I don't really, to us, we can't turn around with the vehicles in that. But if we can get cars turned around out of there, I don't see why you would want to get rid of that one big cutout. But other than that, the circulation is fine for us. It makes us, we have no problem. We can get past each other. There's 24 feet, I believe, right, John, between the tails of the parking stalls? In between, right, 24 feet? Yes. So we could pass each other if we had to. And like I said, the site, the building's protected itself. Without us even getting there, the building's putting the fire out on its own. So if that answers some of your questions. Okay, you're welcome.
Thank you, Fire Marshal.
If I may ask one question?
Go right ahead.
Just if the width of our driveway, we testified that the cartways are at its narrowest 20 feet on either side and its widest 23 and 26. Adequate for your fire equipment?
Yes. The ladder truck needs approximately 20 feet to set up. That's why in our code, a fire lane must be 20 feet minimum. So the entrance being 20 is really going to affect us because we're not going to stop there. But the rest of the drive circulation is plenty of room for us to set up no matter where I have to put the truck up to get to a balcony or a window.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
This was, for the board, we worked with Mr. Hart to make certain that we had what he needed.
Well, we certainly worry about the public safety of all our residents in the community.
Understood.
And I thank Fire Marshal Hart for weighing in on that. I have a couple issues. If I'm leaving now under this plan and I want to go southbound on Route 18, I now have to go to Ferry Road, right?
Not necessarily. Because of the traffic signal at Spring Valley, which will introduce periodic gaps in northbound traffic flow, it will be possible in some scenarios to exit the driveway and get into the left turn lane at Foxborough Drive to do a U-turn. It's a little bit over 500 feet to the stop bar at the traffic signal. It could be done either way.
And if I'm coming southbound on 18 and I want to get to the property, I have to go to Spring Valley.
You got to do a U-turn at Spring Valley. Yes.
And if I don't want to do that, I can just come out and make an illegal U-turn, or I can go on Foxborough and just turn around the monument and come back out.
I guess anything is possible, and somebody could do that, but
Right.
let's wait. No, that wouldn't
I
work.
know that people said.
Let me stop, Mr. Sullivan. You couldn't get in once you're on Foxborough Drive. Even if you turned around, there's no access to the property from Foxborough, so you still wouldn't be able. You've got to go
I
south.
was talking about to get out on the road.
Okay.
Oh,
Jimmy, there's already a jug handle
Yeah, I know.
to go south or to go to Marlborough Road.
Not there.
Yeah, there.
Only from the turning lane you were talking, from the highway. If you make a right on, if you came in and made a right on Foxborough, you can then make an illegal turn to go back out onto 18 if you wanted to go south.
You don't have to do that.
Or you, if you can't make it to to Marlborough, the light at Marlborough, Foxborough, you have to be able to make that to the left-hand turn in order to go south.
But you can do that now.
You can if there's room. It's, what is it, 500 feet, you think?
It's a little bit over 500 feet, yes.
I don't know that blocking up the back was a great idea. I wasn't particularly in favor of that, but I know other people said that. I think it's going to be a hindrance probably to the residents if there's an approval. But it's your application, and I like what you did.
Thank you.
I have nothing else. I don't think the board members.
I was next.
Go ahead.
President Sullivan, Foxborough Drive, one cannot make a right. If someone was coming to make a left, they would have to wait for that person to make that turn, and then they can take that turn. If you follow what I'm saying, you have to basically wait your turn to get out of there. And that was the reason for taking away that, I believe. Secondly, I believe you're going to find a lot of residents cutting through Foxborough Drive to get onto Route 9 if 18 is backed up. Because you can just cut through Foxborough Drive, zigzag a couple of streets, and you're off on the left side and being out that way. Spring Valley Road is a very heavily traffic coming up. You have Route 18 south. You have people coming from the Wawa area making that turn onto Route 18 north. So you have traffic north, and then you have Spring Valley coming up with the yield sign. How far off are you from that yield sign to that entrance? There's 2 fire hydrants, Fire Chief. There's 2 fire hydrants in that area prior to the entrance. Is that where the ladder company would be using?
No, the site has probably 4 or 5 fire hydrants around the whole building, not the ones out on the highway. We never use a hydrant on the highway, once the highway's shut down.
Getting back to my question, how far are you away from Spring Valley yield sign to that entrance?
I haven't measured it, but it's adequate. The DOT has approved these plans. Our driveway location has been reviewed and approved by DOT, so we have adequate separation. I don't know exactly what the distance is, but DOT has approved it.
It is a very dangerous intersection there, and people tend to ride on the side as they're going down to get onto 18. So if you have a resident that wants to get home into that entrance, he would be somewhat detained by that.
I understand, but we have to abide by the regulations of the DOT, and we've done that, and the separation is adequate. But I do understand.
Yeah, thank you.
It's New Jersey, and people drive the way they want to drive.
Mr. Ray, is there a shoulder on Route 18?
There is, yes.
Did the DOT ask you to put a deceleration lane in?
No, they did not.
Okay, thanks.
One more question. Have you, the Board of Education, in regards to school buses, is that going to be the school buses you're going to use into Foxborough, or are the children going to have their own access to buses within their development?
The Board of Education makes that decision.
Right.
And we abide by it. There's room on site.
There's room on your site for it.
We can handle the fire trucks and we can handle the school buses.
Thank you.
Any further questions? Mr. Pape?
I have one last witness. It's Allison, just for one moment.
Sure.
Thank you. Allison Coffin is our professional planner. Her credentials are on the record. Her professional qualifications are on the record, and I remind you that you're under oath. You've heard the witnesses this evening describe the revisions that have been made to the plan. You've heard Mr. Pucci described the removal of the driveway to Foxborough responsive to the neighbor's request. You heard Mr. Pucci describe the drainage system that handles our neighbor's drainage issue, again, at our neighbor's request. You heard Mr. Tronco describe the replacement reforestation and landscaping plan. And you heard that Mr. Pucci describe the 6-foot fence that separates us from our neighbors. Having heard those new facts, I'm going to ask if any of those facts change the opinion that you shared as to the appropriateness of this development on this property.
Not significantly. Some of them do enhance the public benefit, particularly the drainage to the rear and the 6-foot fence are greater protections to the neighbors.
And those you treat as enhancements that further support the conclusions that you reached?
Yes.
Is there anything that was placed on the record that makes you take back any of your opinion?
No.
I have nothing further of Ms. Coffin, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Mr. Wan?
Since this is a use variance and there are a couple of new members on the board, can I ask Ms. Coffin a question related to the use variance itself? I know she testified already, but I would like her to reiterate. So Ms. Coffin, when you're asking for a use variance, right, there are certain proofs. One of them is whether the site is particularly suitable for this location, and to make a case whether this proposed use is better or better suited for the site over what is permitted by the zone. So can you just elaborate on that so that the board understands? Because I want the board to understand the difference as to when do you come and ask the zoning board for a use variance versus when does a town council go in for rezoning? So can you please explain?
So the particular suitability of the site for the use and whether or not it can be used as it's zoned can be the sort of testimony that the board's given. In this case, the site can be developed commercially, but it is not as well suited for the permitted uses as for the proposed use in terms of the negative impact on the adjacent properties. Though this site, again, could accommodate permitted uses, the impact on the adjacent neighborhood from permitted uses is less desirable, particularly in terms of things like noise, odors, the type of activity that happens at the rear of a commercial structure, than what we are proposing with the residential apartments, which is a much quieter use and has a much lower traffic impact. I believe it's 50% of the traffic that a permitted use would create on this site.
If I'm, do you have a further question? I know I had one that I wanted to ask her, but, oh, thank you very much. When you testified on December 1st, you also pointed out language that is found in Olbridge's master plan, not the zoning ordinance. The zoning ordinance is from which the zoning ordinance, we definitely need a D1 variance. But the master plan had certain language that was advanced by eliminating a commercial activity against a residential, an existing residential community. And if you could maybe remind the board and respond to Ms. Sawant's overall inquiries, what master plan purposes are advanced?
I actually think I had read the purposes of the zone, which was in the zoning ordinance, and the purposes of the zone included utilizing suitable land for development in a more efficient, functional, and aesthetic manner while controlling and managing highway access and traffic congestion, minimizing the impacts on adjacent and nearby residential developments, and protecting environmentally sensitive areas. In this case, the proposed use has much less traffic congestion and minimal impacts on the adjacent properties than a conforming commercial use would have.
Well, and I'm sorry, Mr. Pape, I mean, just to be fair, I mean, just so the record's clear, the master plan adopted by the governing body is what helps lay out the zoning ordinances and how uses are how property is to be utilized. So I think, you know, just to be fair, I think you have to acknowledge that the town zoned this property commercially, and the town saw fit that it be a commercial use. Now, you're certainly here for a use variance, and that's your right. But to say that there's language in the master plan that would support a use variance, I don't know that's intellectually accurate. Yeah, accurate's a better word than honest or dishonest. Would you?
I just want to add to something Mr. Dasty is saying too, because, and I think somewhere in my memo I had that too. It was twice that the council contemplated and went over the EDO ordinance, and there was a reason why there was an original recommendation to include residential, but the council voted against the residential at that time, and residential was pulled out. This is EDO 3 zone, so I mean, when you're on a highly traversed corridor, it is very hard to make a strong comment that the site is not suited for that use. And when Ms. Coffin says that the noise, the sound produced from this is lesser, I mean, you're proposing 120 residents, right? That can't be the reason for the grant of a use variance. Also, I know when you seek a use variance, you have to prove what unique characteristics of the site make it more appropriate for the proposed use versus what is permitted by the zone. And I see that link still missing.
I can go through all of my testimony again.
Please don't. Okay.
Ma'am, I mean,
We, unless there's further questions of Ms. Coffin, I have nothing further of her.
Anything else from the professionals? Mr. Hart, you don't have anything, right? Okay. You're not going to have any other witnesses?
I have no further witnesses, Mr. Chair.
Should we open the public portion? How
I
about
think that would be appropriate. I do know that Mr. William Miller, the attorney for the association, is here. You have in the past recognized him at the beginning, and I'd ask if that courtesy could be extended.
He has spoken before the board twice already, and I have no problem recognizing him as first. This is matter 52-2021Z RD Management Corp. located frontage on Route 18 at Foxborough Drive for multi-family residential community. I'm going to open up the public portion at this time. I'm going to ask anybody if they are coming up, you have to speak directly into the microphone. Before you testify, the board attorney will swear you in. He'll ask you for your name and address where you live. Then you can make your comments directly to the board. I'm not asking you, please don't engage with the applicant's professionals unless it goes through their attorney. And the board attorney will try and keep you in line on that. But we welcome all comments. We'll try and hear as many as we can. And I think we're going to start with Mr. Miller, yes?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The name's William A. Miller. I'm the attorney for the Foxborough Village Homeowners and Townhouse Association, and I am authorized to speak on behalf of the Board of Trustees. I would just advise the board that I'm not authorized to speak on behalf of the individual unit owners, and I believe there are some here who wish to make comments or discuss the application. But Mr. Pape is right in that there's been conversation and obviously objections set forth by the association and the individual unit owners. And to the extent that the board may not be aware that the Board of Trustees for Foxborough was vigorously opposed to the prior application of a commercial development because it involved a gas station and convenience store and would have involved all of the numerous factors that some of the experts have identified. So they do believe that the modifications as proposed by the applicant do satisfy most, if not all, of their concerns, because the issue primarily was the traffic that would accumulate on Foxborough Drive, the water situation that affected the Stone Ridge Road properties, and then the insertion of a fence with some additional benefit that we weren't really expecting at this point. But the board does believe that the applicant's use as an apartment building would enhance the general welfare of this particular area and would help to maintain the integrity of the Foxborough development as well as to preserve the safety of the Foxborough development. If you may recall that there were unit owners who testified that they were concerned, especially with the school buses that go up and down Foxborough Drive in the morning and the late afternoon for the school children, as well as to the potential that there would be numerous cars parked on Stone Ridge and other adjoining roadways. So with that in mind, the Board of Trustees is in support of the application for an apartment building rather than a commercial setting. They do believe that it won't affect the master plan or the ordinance or anything that has been set forth in the master plan of Old Bridge. They think it's better for the overall general welfare of the community, and they're very appreciative that the applicant has been responsive to their concerns. And we've been here at all of the meetings, expressed those concerns, and I think that they've been addressed. So I would like to say on behalf of the board that they're hoping that you favorably look at this, because we don't want to be in a position where we're fighting on the commercial property again, because that was a major concern for the individual unit owners, especially on Stone Ridge. So with that in mind, I have no further comments, and thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Miller. I'll ask you one question.
Yes.
Does the Board of Trustees understand that this is not zoned for such?
Yes, they do understand. They understand the negative and the positive criteria and everything of that nature. But again, I was present for the planning board. I've discussed it. The unit owners, the members of the association, they were, you could hear their antipathy toward the gas station all the way up to North Jersey, let's put it that way. There was a strong feeling that that would have been very detrimental to not only the property values in Foxborough, but potentially much more damaging to their overall integrity of the community. So they want to preserve the general lifestyle that they have in Foxborough, which is basically a residential community. They don't have much through traffic because they're winding streets. They don't go directly to Route 9. They can get to Ferry, but it is a complicated scenario. So they're hoping that in a perfect world, this is the lesser of two evils. You can't say that the property can't be developed. So now they're seeing the applicant work with them to ensure their integrity of their community. So we have discussed that at length. But again, I would defer to any individual unit owners who want to make comments as well. Thank you again.
Thank you very much, Mr. Miller.
No.
Hold on, it's a public portion.
Okay.
Who wants to speak? Please, okay, come forward. Good evening, sir. Can you step up to the microphone? Board attorney will swear you in.
Do you swear, raise your hand, sir. Do you swear or affirm to testify truthfully in this matter?
Yes.
Can we have your name and your address again, sir?
Stephen Backman, 17 Stone Ridge Road. I am Lot 50, which is probably one of the ones that are most closest to this project.
Go ahead, sir.
I'm going to... I just want to say that Mr. Miller took the wind out of my sail, so to speak, and he is correct that we are in agreement with this for one reason. This is a matter of common sense, okay? This decision is just common sense. Life is full of trade-offs. Do we have the opportunity to not have a gas station in our backyard and the volume of traffic that would develop with that and the crime element that a gas station would attract? We have the opportunity to make a common sense decision to approve something like this, which we're all in favor of. I've been in the construction business for over 30 years. I have never, ever seen a contractor be as overwhelmingly generous as the applicant has been. That speaks volumes. They want to be a good neighbor. I have lived there for 36 years with an empty lot behind me. The volume of building that's going on in Old Bridge and the surrounding towns is not going to stop. We need to do that. That's a whole separate discussion. But does it offer me a better view without a building there to see all the accidents that happen on 18? Of course. I'd rather have the building to protect my view from that. Okay? And in all seriousness, this is not something that's going to generate a large amount of traffic. Okay? A commercial establishment there would be incalculable how many cars that would attract, especially with all the building that's going on Texas Road. All those cars would be coming up Marlboro Road, and they'd be right at the gas station on Foxborough Drive. It would be a tragic decision to allow that to happen. And these folks have every opportunity to go fight that. We're in a position where you can right a wrong. When the master plan was developed, a lot of properties got caught with a broad brush. This is one of those properties. There should have been exceptions. This was not accepted from the master plan, and that's why we're here. And the builder realizes that this is a better plan as well. When have you ever had a project where the community around is in agreement with it? Everybody always finds something to nitpick on. We're all in agreement. So I implore you to make the right decision, because by denying this application is going to almost assure a gas station there, and that the town loses on. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Anybody else? Ma'am? You might want to lower that microphone a little bit.
Hi, ma'am.
Judith Matola, 27.
Hold on. You're not being heard. You got to.
Raise your right hand, ma'am. Do you swear or affirm to testify truth in this matter?
Yes, I do.
Can we have your name again and your address?
Judith Matola, 27 Mariposa Place. I mean, as you say, the lesser of two evils is to have an apartment building. We don't want a gas station. I agree, knocking off the exit to coming into Foxborough Drive is very, we really appreciate that. My two concerns are if I'm coming down Route 18, coming up north, because I'm going to pull into Foxborough Drive, do I now have to worry about these cars coming out? I mean, that to me is a major concern over there about the traffic on Route 18. Route 18 is a horror story. They are going to come through Foxborough. There's no ands, ifs, or buts, because I know if I have to go to the post office, I go 18 and I go through Southwood Drive. So people, once they know the ways and outs, they're going to come into development. I also concerned, how long is this going to take, and what's going to be the impact on us while they're building this? You know, is the road going to be blocked? Are we going to have problems? You know, there's a lot of accidents on Route 9. 18 is a horror story. Do the residents in these buildings have any access into Foxborough, or they're going to be completely knocked out of Foxborough so they can't come in? So they're going to have their own bus pickup for the kids to go to school. Is it going to come that way? That's just a little day-by-day stories. But like they say, if it has to be a choice, I mean, I'd rather have a building than have a gas station. I mean, I'd rather have nothing. I came from New York. You can tell by my Brooklyn accent that I didn't come to a private development and a single-family home to have an apartment building in the front. But, you know, like they say, if that's life, the lesser of two evils, then I have to go with the apartment building. I'd rather have nothing, but the guy owns the property. They need to make a living. I understand that. So I'm just curious what the impact is if, I guess we have no choice, it's going to be an apartment building. What happens to us? How long is that going to take to build, and any impact on the Foxborough residents as to building that?
I think that they put something on the record that Mr. Pape, do you want one of your witnesses to kind of guess?
I can, well, one, there's no interconnectivity of this apartment community with the Foxborough community, meaning that they don't share amenities. These are people who are going to be living next to people. I would imagine that they will have people relationships with each other. The school bus pickup is dictated by the Board of Education. We would expect it to be on our site, but it's as the Board of Education directs. The time to build a project such as this, everything affects it. Materials availability affects it. But this is a project that is typically built between 1 and 2 years from beginning to end. It's one structure. It's not a series of structures. So between 1 and 2 years, and there's no need to do any road closures at all. All the construction will be on site, and the access will be from Route 18.
Is that helpful, ma'am?
Yeah, the only one other thing is, if you say there's 120 apartments, you said like 200 spots. What happens if people have parties and stuff? Where are these people going to, where those extra cars get parked?
The parking has been designed to be fully compliant with both the township and the RSIS standards. The number of parking stalls is not in any way compromised from that which the ordinance or RSIS requires. So we, as Mr.
Yeah, I understand that, the law or whatever, but people are going to have parties. So I'm just curious, where are those extra cars going to go?
How does it happen in your community when there are parties?
They're lined up on the streets, or there's 6 cars in a driveway.
I would expect that the parking lot will handle it, and if it doesn't, they're going to have to make arrangements for them to be parked off-site.
Right, because they still can come into Foxborough. I mean, they're not, you know, they could still come around our bends, coming in from 18 and coming in from 9. So, but you're saying there's going to be no access for them to like park onto that cross street and then walk into development. They'll have to come down the block.
There's no access from this community to the Foxborough community. That's correct. The existing Foxborough community.
Right, from them coming out of the development. But they can still come into Foxborough and park somewhere there to go into that development.
To the extent that your roadways allow public parking, yes, but to the extent that it's a private community, no.
Well, like I said, better an apartment building than a gas station. We
Thank
do
you.
not want a gas station.
Thank you, ma'am. Anybody else? Board Attorney will swear you in.
Yes, ma'am, can you raise your right hand? Do you swear or affirm to testify truthfully in this matter before the board?
I do.
Can we have your name and address again, ma'am?
Brenda Gianchetti. I live at 3 Stoneridge Road. I would just like to add my appreciation to the applicant for taking our considerations so seriously and acting on them. And I think the building is a pretty building. I think it will not detract from the area. I think you've done everything you can to keep it separate from the development. I've lived in Old Bridge for 30 years, and I heard something at a town council meeting when I first moved in, that everybody wants to live in the last house that's built in Old Bridge, and that's not reasonable. So the land was originally going to be an office building. No one really needs office buildings anymore. But people have to live somewhere, and it's a pretty building. You've addressed the water concerns, you've addressed the access on Foxborough Drive. I'm fully in favor of it and very appreciative.
Thank you, ma'am. Anybody else? You come up.
Hello, ma'am, can you raise your right hand, please? Do you swear or affirm to testify truthfully in this matter before the board?
I do.
And can we have your name again, please, ma'am?
Jeanette Franco,
And your address, please, ma'am?
25 Stone Ridge Road.
And can we have this spelling of your last name, please?
Franco.
Thank you.
I do want to say I don't do well with public speaking, so I'm just going to read off what
You're doing fine.
I have to read, so I might not make eye contact.
I won't look at you if you don't look at me.
I just want to start off by saying, in a perfect world, I'd actually wouldn't like anything back there. And I also want to state that my concerns are just my personal opinion. My backyard view consists of the trees and changing colors during the seasons and sometimes a family of deers. I moved into this development a couple of years ago, and the reasons I chose this development were for a couple of reasons. As soon as you drive into the development, you get a sense of safety, you get a sense of peace, among other things. I feel safe walking my dog late in the evening because I know that whoever's in the area should be residents of Foxborough Village. With this project, I don't think that will no longer be the case, because our neighborhood will now be congested just like the streets will be. Meaning you will now have other residents from this residential building come into the development for a morning walk or evening walk. I was going to mention the entrance or exit, but that's no longer in place, but that was a huge concern, you know, coming onto Foxborough, and then there's traffic coming this way, and worrying about the people entering, exiting from the building there. Parking. Our streets are not wide enough to have two passing vehicles at the same time if there was a parked vehicle. So there is a concern, you know, with potential residents now parking in the Foxborough development because our streets are not that wide. Lastly, privacy. The trees are what divides our yards from Route 18. In my opinion, with this three-story building, there's not that much privacy when you might have neighbors now looking onto your yard. Now, had this building been there when I purchased my home just a couple of years ago, that would have been a reason for me not to purchase this home. When I was looking for a home, I sought the area because there was a sense of safety and a proud sense of ownership. But in my opinion, again, with this three-story residential building, for me, it's, I don't know, I prefer the trees. But that's all. Thank you.
Thank you. You did a good job.
Oh, thank you. I was nervous.
Anybody else?
Mr. Chairman, I'm sorry. I know there's a lot of discussion, just to be fair, about a gas station versus this. There are other permitted uses in the EDO3 zone, and I think
it's
just to be
important-
fair.
But I think it's important there is an application for a gas station and convenience store that was of right presented to the planning board. That application is currently in the Superior Court.
Litigation, yeah.
It has been stayed, and we have agreed to abandon it if there is an alternative approval to this property. So that gas station convenience store that everyone is mentioning is exactly the application that was presented to the planning board and is currently before Judge McCloskey.
I understand that, Mr. Pavin, and I appreciate that, but there are other permitted uses in the EDO3 zone, which maybe the planner can just explain, just for fairness. I understand that there is pending
There are other
litigation.
uses, but gas station and convenience is permitted, and that is the one that the applicant is pursuing.
Sure.
So, yes, that is correct. There are other uses that are permitted, some of them retail, sale and services, fitness centers, or tutoring places. There are restaurants, there are banquet halls, there are many other uses permitted. Gas station and convenience store is one of the permitted conditional uses. The applicant meets all the conditions of the conditional use, and therefore they were in front of the planning board. But yes, there are, other than the gas station, there are many other uses that are also permitted in that zone.
Thank you. Sir.
Sir, can you raise your right hand, please? Can you, do you swear or affirm to testify truth in this matter before the board?
Yes.
And can we have your, can you speak a little closer, and can we have your name, please, sir?
Gary Hines, 262 Silver.
I didn't hear the name.
Gary Hines?
Yeah.
Can you spell your last name, sir?
Hinds.
Hinds, Hines. I would have spelled it wrong. And your address again, please, sir.
262 Silver Lane.
Thank you very much.
I just had one thing. Everybody seems to have a problem with the possibility of people having parties and access in our streets. The fence stops short of, the street. Can they continue the fence down the sideline to alleviate some of that? People crossing over and going into our development?
Oh, to close it off, you mean?
Yeah, to bring the fence line out to 18 and stop it at 18. To stop the flow of people coming into Foxborough development, because the fence stops at the very back corner of the
You're
property.
talking about running a fence all the way down Foxborough out to Route 18?
Yeah, and that would alleviate all the issues that everybody has, I believe.
Meaning that people couldn't walk through, they'd have to go.
Because we have a tot lot, we have basketball courts, they're going to be used.
Can I say something?
I don't think you can.
Isn't that a public street? So anybody could walk on a public street.
It's not the public street.
It is a public street.
Tot lot and the basketball court and the rest of it over there.
Yeah, but they're not saying they want to use that.
Well,
anybody can walk there right now and use it. It is a public street. You can walk on a public street.
You can't really stop
do
people.
You think kids are going to drive over to this? Or is that, seriously?
Is the concern that there's children here that would go play with the children over there?
Yeah, you got 120 families. That's like
Right.
almost a third of that development.
So kids shouldn't play with the other kids.
No, that's not what we're saying. It's not a big tot lot. It's already has 880 homes. Okay?
I think the short answer to your question is I think it's probably impractical, and I don't even know if it's allowable to have a fence go all the way out.
All the way up to the
street.
easement, yeah. It's a public right-of-way. I don't know that the DOT would even ever allow that, but.
I know what you're trying to accomplish by that, but I don't think it's allowable,
Yeah.
even if they wanted to do it.
You go to the end of this street right here,
Mhm.
the 18, and you hit the sidewalk, and that sidewalk path brings you straight out to the clubhouse. And I think, for kids to go from there to our tot lot would be pretty easy. And they already have issues with, people coming in and using the basketball courts that shouldn't be. It's private.
Okay. Well, it's a public street, though. I don't know.
The street.
Sorry?
It's not about the street. It's more or less about the tot lot, basketball courts, tennis courts.
Okay.
I think that would be I'm just interjecting, it
more of
would
an
probably be a
HOA. I have a
homeowner's
problem.
situation where that they would have to prohibit only their own membership by fence, but I can't speak for the homeowners association.
We have We have listened to each and every request of the neighbors, and as you've seen, each and every request has had a positive response. We're not comfortable with that. It doesn't appear to be appropriate.
I thank you, sir, for your concept, but it is a public thoroughfare, so.
It was just something that I thought maybe alleviates this side and that side.
No, I
I'm a builder
know where you're coming
also,
from, but
and
you're
an
not going to be
appraiser.
able to prevent somebody from walking in there.
Especially when you're asking us to
could
build a
deter
whole
it.
new sidewalk system.
Yeah, it could deter it. For little kids, anyway.
I would agree that if you should bring that up to your homeowners association to take some action if that's what you're
It's
worried
not our
about.
property, it's their property.
No.
You want us to fence our whole thing?
No. I'm not suggesting anything. I'm saying if they're coming into if you say people are coming onto the Foxborough property and using the facilities,
Yeah,
that's something I think that your homeowners association could and maybe should deal with. I don't know. I don't live there, so I don't know what the problems are.
Okay,
And I thank you for your comments.
thank you.
Anybody else? I would really not rather repeat Mr. Berkman because, Bachman, the hour is growing at 9:20. I have 2 more applications. Well, you're already talking, so.
Well, sir, if you are, Mr. Chairman, if he is going to speak, then through the chair.
Come forward.
Then you have to come up here.
I just want to reiterate the question that came up about allowable building on that property. For the members that might not have, members of the board that might not have been involved in the previous application, all of these other things that were mentioned may be able to be built there, but that's not what will happen. If this is denied, a gym will not go there, an ice cream store will not go there, a gas station will go there. And that is tragic. Thank you for letting me make that comment.
Thank you, sir. Anybody else? Okay, I'm going to close the public portion. We'll wait for Mr. Pape to come back to the table. Mr. Pape, we've closed the public portion.
Yes. Mr. Chairman, the hour is late, and you have given us more than our share. I would like to make a fairly substantial summation statement, and with your permission, Mr. Chair, I would make that at the next meeting that you make available to us. We rest, our case is in. The public has completed theirs, so all that remains is the summation and the vote, respecting the board's time, and also to provide us with the opportunity to do as meaningful a summation as possible. I'd ask that you carry us to the first opportunity. My summation will probably take 20 minutes, and so for allocating time. If that's acceptable, Mr. Chair, that's our
Certainly
request.
acceptable to the board.
Thank you.
I think it's a great idea.
Thank you. What evening would you let us return?
We'll have to check with Natalie as far as, so basically, talking 45 minutes or so?
Less, yes.
If an attorney says 20, it's 45 minutes.
I was going to say, first of all, you get paid by the hour, not by the 45 minutes, so.
I can say that because, in due respect, Mr.
Counselor, it's when the attorney uses only in front of 20 that you're in trouble. I didn't use only and I didn't use just. I said 20.
So it'd probably be, we'd have to really book an hour, I'm thinking, right?
Sure.
There's going to be responses from the board, too.
Mr. Pape, I think Ms. Sawant's asking you to go over there for a moment to maybe help coordinate a time.
You're allowed.
We're still, ladies, we're still in session. Ladies, your voices, everything you're saying is going over the airwaves.
Oh, I didn't realize.
Yes.
So far, we didn't say anything naughty.
Yes, very good. you're watching at home, we're just delayed by the attorneys trying to pick a proper date for the summation. Mr. Pape, I understand that we've picked March 2nd?
March 2nd works for us. I will do my very best to be succinct and efficient in my statements. May I ask that it be carried to March 2nd without renotice or republication, with the understanding that the case in chief is in and the public portion is closed?
That's correct. We'll put it up front and get that right out of the way. If you're watching at home, this matter is going to be continued on March 2nd. There'll be no further notice. If you're here in the public and you wish to attend, there's not going to be any further notice, so please come on March the 2nd. We start at 7:30. Thank you and your professionals for their testimony tonight, sir.
Thank you for all the courtesies extended, Mr. Chair and Board.
We're going to take a quick recess, 5 minutes, while the stenographer sets up. Probably less than 5. If you don't have to leave the dais, please don't. We stand. All right, zoning board's back from recess. Ms. C, could I have a roll call, please?
Okay.
I'd ask those in the back of the room, if you were going to go back on the record, if you could exit quietly. Thank you. Go ahead, Ms. C.
Chairman Sullivan?
Here.
Mr. Connor?
Here.
Mr. Stoner?
Here.
Mr. Scogno?
Here.
Ms. Andrews? Ms. Testaverde?
Here.
Mr. Izzo?
Here.
Mr. Dasty?
Here.
Ms. Sawant?
Here.
Mr. Dargy?
Present.
Mr. Hart? And myself, Ms. C. Thank you.
Thank you. Next matter is 28-2022Z Interbell Automotive Corp. It's located in the EDO 1 zone, block 2001, lot 2526, 1706 Englishtown Road. This is a used car dealership license application, D variance and waiver of site plan. Peter Clauser, Esquire, representing. When we last met, we're back.
We presented this on December 15th. It was at a virtual meeting. We completed the presentation. The board was short a few members that night, so I asked if we could carry it to this evening. We skipped over the reorg meetings in January, and I believe if we could do, as an administrative fact, we...
Mr. Clauser, thank you. Ms. Andrews, Mr. Stoner, and Mr. Izzo have all reviewed the transcript, and they've signed certifications tonight that they are prepared to proceed.
Great. So I have 7 voting members.
You have 7 voting members. Right, Ms. C, you have them all there, yes. Thank you,
So,
sir.
as I stated, we presented the application complete last time. This is a site that was previously approved by the board for its present use. That's not being changed in any way, and I'm going to address that specific statement. Ukraine, I wouldn't be here this evening. When that war occurred, those accounts were cut off by our government. He's no longer able to access them. So he is seeking the right, thank you, seeking the right to utilize an automobile dealership license at the site, not to sell automobiles at the site, but simply to allow him to continue his purchase of automobiles through accounts. When we were here last time, the statement by Dimitri in his testimony that no operation would change at the site and that would be exactly the same struck the chair, I know in particular, then why should we grant the application? But that testimony was in direct response to a comment in the professional reports seeing if adding the license would modify the use on the site, I think exacerbated was the concern. So I wanted to make sure that Dimitri got on the record that it would not change the operation of his business, but the statement was not designed in any way to diminish the importance of the approval or the authority of this board to grant it. It was to address specifically a comment in the professional report that, that this would not exacerbate the use on the site. And then the second thing I'd like to address is Damien pointed out that there were times that he has counted more cars on the site than were permitted from a storage perspective. The site was approved for 75 storage vehicles, 37 parking spaces for employees. That's 122 vehicles plus 5 full-sized trailers. So the site was designed to accommodate a great number of vehicles, and it does so even when he has those busy moments that he testified to the board in a safe manner. And that's Mr. Hart issued his report to the board that he's passed all of his inspections, that he's comfortable with the way the site is laid out, and from a visual perspective, the board can take notice that the building blocks the rear of the site. So we have a use that's going to continue in the same way that it was approved by the board. The need for the license is triggered by really very unusual events. You have a commitment by the applicant to continue to operate the site as was approved by the board. So we're asking that you can act favorably so this local businessman can continue to operate his business without having to rely on others, which he is doing right now, who, although there's an additional cost, those others can decide to cooperate, to no longer cooperate at any point in the future. So he wants to be able to act independently, and that's all we're asking for. And we'll agree to all of the necessary conditions that this would not become an automobile dealership, that it would not, there would be no sales at the site, and we can record a resolution that has those conditions in it into the deed book, because that's not the goal here. So thank you. I would ask that the board act favorably on the app.
My recollection is when we finished last time, you were coming back with language that you said you would craft to ensure that this sale of automobiles would never happen there. That's the only reason we came back here. So did you craft that language?
No, I'm sorry, Mr. Chair, I had a different recollection. It was that I was coming back to some, but I would think that Mr. Dosty and I would go back and forth with conditions in the resolution that automobile sale, that's the language, that automobile sales would not occur, and then I record that into the deed book. That's what it would be.
Okay, and that would prohibit anybody in the future from doing so.
That's correct. I'll allow your attorney to give you legal advice, but I've been here enough that I'm comfortable saying to you, yeah, that's why we would record it in the deed book. We include a provision, because we don't want to ever prohibit anything, that could be modified, but only by you or your predecessors.
It would be a deed restriction, Mr. Chairman, in order to have it lifted. This owner or any future owner would have to come back before you to lift the deed restriction. If it's going to be a condition of approval, which the applicant's saying they're okay with.
Certainly. Yeah, that's not the goal.
Ms. What? I think your mic's off.
My only concern, and I think you covered it, is if there is a change in ownership, then we want to ensure that this doesn't become a dealership. So, because use variance runs with the land, we're granting a use variance, so we should at least put that condition in so that it expires, or the new owner would have to come back to the board.
Just because it runs with the land, just like if they were to sell it, a new owner would be able to have this use. The deed restriction or the condition of the approval would run with the land. So that's correct. If it is granted, that condition would be put both in the resolution and it would be recorded against the property. And the only way that it would be lifted is to come back for an amended approval.
Sure.
Okay. So, and Mr. Chairman, that's certainly the language that I can craft and we'll put forth in the resolution. I'll let Vina fly spec it to make sure, from a planning perspective, it's acceptable if the board were to act favorably.
Okay. Let me go to the board members. Any questions? Right left?
I have one, sir. Does this relate to parts of the cars being sold? Because when I went there for a visit, it seemed everything was dismantled, ready to be sold for this, for that, like that. So you talk about no selling cars. What about the parts for cars?
That's the exact nature of the dealership. But
That's his business.
They're shipped out, and that's what was approved by the board. There's no commercial activity on site. You couldn't go there and buy a tire rim. That's not what it's approved for.
Okay, thank you.
Anybody else? Ladies on this side? No?
That's all. I would just ask that you act favorably on the application.
You've accomplished what I asked you to do then, and I've gotten the reassurance that it's not going to turn into a dealership, that they won't sell cars there, and that you're going to record that deed, correct, deed restriction.
Yes, it'll be recorded with the land, that's correct.
Any owner would not get a dealer's, they could only use it the same way.
That's exactly right. What'll happen, with the way that I prefer to do it, if Chris allows it, is the condition will be in the resolution that you will vote on. And then I just record the resolution. And I say this property is subject to all of those conditions.
Yes, yeah, because it'll be a deed restriction in the resolution recorded against the land.
Yeah, exactly.
And he would provide, and the applicant would provide a copy of the recorded deed to my office and to Vina's office to make sure that it's there. And in order for it to be lifted again, the applicant or a future owner would have to come before the board to have it lifted.
Correct.
Right. So the board would be voting on a D1 use variance.
That's correct.
Correct? The board members, you understand that? It's for a use variance to have the license attached to the property, and the waiver of the site plan, we already...
It was a site plan for the canopy. Yeah. I don't think anybody cares about that.
There are other bulks, right, for that?
I don't think there's any...
Or is it just...
I don't think there's any bulk variances other than what was existing.
I'll just wait to see what Vina says.
There was a de minimis bulk variance of 0.5 feet for the, can't read my notes, excuse me.
Something changed in your ordinance, that's right.
It was to legitimize, as I recall, the maximum front yard setback, Vina. It's 50 feet, excuse me, 50 feet are required, 50.5 feet is existing. Right?
Thank you.
Page 3 of your
What's
memorandum.
that front yard?
Maximum front yard along Englishtown Road. 50 feet required, 50.5 feet is existing. That's the only
So
one.
it's over by a half a foot, yeah.
That's it, yeah.
All right,
Thank you.
Board, first we'd have to vote on a D1. If that survives, then we'll take the vote on the maximum front yard. So you're voting D1 for the issuance of a car resale license?
Used
or
car
just
license. This allows Damien to
Used car
actually
license.
put a license out, yeah, the used car license at the
It's
site.
called used car license.
Right.
Anybody in favor of moving this? Andrews is in favor. Is there a second?
Second, Connor.
Roll call, please. That's the D1.
Yes.
Yes.
Mr. Scogno?
Yes.
Miss.
Yes.
Yes.
Mr. Izzo?
Yes.
Chairman Sullivan?
As long as it has a deed restriction, yes.
Thank you.
Thanks, Pete.
And now on
We're going to move,
Sorry.
we're going to move right along.
On the bulk
We-
variance.
Oh, I'm
Are you
sorry,
gonna
did we,
cite the
the maximum front yard, that's right. It's maximum 50, and it's at 50.5, so it's 6 foot over. 6 inches over, half a foot. Someone want to move that?
Connor, move it.
Is there a
Second, Scogno?
Roll call, please.
Mr. Connor?
Yes.
Mr. Stoner?
Yes.
Mr. Scogno?
Yes.
Miss Andrews? Ms. Testaverde?
Yes.
Mr. Izzo?
Yes.
Chairman Sullivan?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Clauser.
On the site, I think, do you have to vote on the
Oh,
site as well?
the site plan.
Waiver of site plan.
Yeah, for the canopy, correct.
Waiver of site plan for the canopy.
Connor,
Is there a
move
second?
it.
Second, Stoner.
Stoner seconds. Waiver for the canopy in the back.
Mr. Connor?
Yes.
Mr. Stoner?
Yes.
Mr. Scogno?
Yes.
Miss Andrews?
Yes.
Ms. Testaverde?
Yes.
Mr. Izzo?
Yes.
Chairman Sullivan?
Yes, I think we got it all.
That's it. Okay.
Well, don't get up.
Flag it.
Where are you
I got a
going?
file.
Don't leave yet.
Time out. Oh, time out. Fire Marshal, thank you for being here this evening. Call it into the record, Mr. Clauser.
Yes, please.
31-2022 is our final application for the evening. It's EOM 538 R34 LLC. This is low-density residential R30 block 11252.14, lot 21.11. Location, this is 538 Route 34 for subdivision. It's actually minor subdivision with the variance. Peter Clauser, Esquire, representing the applicant. Mr. Clauser.
Good evening, Mr. Chair. For the record, Peter Clauser with the firm Heilbron Pape on behalf of the applicant. This is an application for the Oak Tree Plaza. It was approved by the zoning board before I was a part of the application, before the current owner was part of the application. It's a mixed-use development, apartments in the back, commercial up front, fronting on Route 34. The applicant is proposing this evening a minor subdivision of the property. This is common in commercial developments like this. A lot of times you can think of it as like a freehold raceway mall. You know, the individual end caps would have their own tax lots, so they could be either owned individually or, more importantly, financed individually. So we're asking for a minor subdivision to allow, we call it a technical subdivision or a financial subdivision, to allow different financing options for the two lots, but it will continue to operate exactly the same as was approved by the board through the use of cross-access easements and cross-utility easements. So if I could, I'd like to introduce Noah Friedman. He's the principal, the owner of the facility. If he could just share with the board, I think just to give you a little bit of insight as to the financial world out there and why he's asking for this relief.
Mr. Friedman, if you could just grab that microphone, sir, so we can hear you. Do you swear, do you swear or affirm to testify truth in this matter before the board?
I do affirm.
Thank you.
It's pretty public knowledge that
Just share on the record with this is your company.
This is my company, yeah.
And you purchased the property as it was approved previously by this board.
Correct.
And you're asking the board to divide the residential from the commercial, and why is that?
So I think it's pretty public knowledge that in the last 2 years, costs for development have skyrocketed, and interest rates specifically have also skyrocketed. So the costs that I have are much higher. Specifically, why that's important here is that the loan, as I've gone back to the bank now to get a higher loan to be able to finish the project, now they're telling me that because there's significant commercial aspect to the property, that the interest rate also is significantly higher, even higher than what normal residential interest rates are. So that's the reason I'm coming before the board today, just to be able to just do the refinance on the only on the residential portion would lower what was the interest rate even higher than what I was originally anticipating. I'm not, that's the reason I'm coming before the board today.
Thank you. So, Mr. Chair, I would never suggest that financial considerations are the basis for the board to grant variances or uses. But when it comes to a technical subdivision like this, I want to explain to the board why we're doing this. Why would we, want to do this? And that's sort of the purpose of the testimony. It also helps an approval that the board found suitable for the site to operate, viability-wise. So you have somebody who's investing in our community, investing in Old Bridge, and they're asking for the board's help in order to create this financial subdivision. And then you'll hear through the testimony how we're going to alleviate any of the concerns by just tying the two lots right back together. Now, the maintenance and operation of the site, you'll agree, will stay with the commercial entity.
Yes.
Okay. And we'll draft and record, as we just discussed in the last application, documents that Mr. Dosteel approved to evidence the fact that those maintenance responsibilities will maintain with the commercial entity. I have no further questions for Mr. Friedman. He's available. Our next witness is Jerry. He's our fellow who designed the minor site plan and can take you through the dimensions.
By all means.
Okay. Mr. Kuchera, if you could be sworn.
Sir, can you raise your right hand? Do you swear or affirm to testify truthfully in this matter before the board?
I do.
Can we have your name, sir?
Sure. Full name is Gerard, Gerard. Last name Gesario, Gesario.
Thank you, sir.
So if you could, Jerry, take the board around.
This is credentials.
I was
What
just
are his
gonna say.
credentials?
What's that?
What are his
Oh,
credentials?
I'm sorry. You know what?
That's okay.
I'm doing the haste makes waste thing. That's
That's
exactly
okay.
what I'm doing, Mr. Chair. Jerry, if you could share with the board your licenseship, your education, and your affiliation.
I'm a 1988 graduate of the New Jersey Institute of Technology with a Bachelor of Science in Civil Engineering. I've been a licensed professional engineer in the state of New Jersey since 1994. I've testified before, I'm employed by Jarmel Kaizel Architects and Engineers as a Director of Civil Engineering. My 9 years there, I've testified before over 60 boards throughout the state.
Mario, obviously, we're going to accept your credentials as an expert, and I wanted that to go on the record, not only for those watching at home, but we have a new board member seated, and I'd like him to get used to hearing people's backgrounds.
Absolutely.
Yeah, that's my fault, Mr. Chair.
Not a problem, Mr. Klauser. I'm sorry. Now you can continue, sir.
So if you could take us around the general description of the site and the layout.
Sure. What's shown is the map that was submitted with the application. It's a map prepared by Morgan Engineering and Surveying dated October 25th, 2022. And just for the record, that map was prepared with my direction. We provided Morgan with the location of the subdivision line. They were the surveyors of record that ultimately prepared the map. So in general, as council mentioned, we're here to subdivide the existing lot 21.11 and block 11252.14 into two lots. The subdivision line, and I'll point here, is a simple line that runs across behind those parking spaces and ties back into the rear. So that's the proposed subdivision line. Like most property lines, they're just lines on papers, but in this case, this really is just a line on paper. The prior approval for the two retail buildings in the residential complex will act just as it was approved under the prior application. There's no changes to circulation. The emergency egresses that were part of the original approval, the fire lanes, all remain, and this will just continue to act exactly as it was approved. As council mentioned, this is strictly a technical subdivision for financial reasons. The site is currently under construction. The residential building is near complete, my understanding. The retail building on the right is framed and enclosed. The storm drainage is in, the retaining walls are in. Most, if not all, of the walkways, drive aisles, asphalt and perimeter landscaping is all in place as of today. Let's see. It's just for the record, I'll touch on the variances, but our planner will go through them quickly. The original approval came with variances that were approved. There was the use variance for the mixed use to allow the residential with the retail component in the R30 zone. There was also a variance granted for maximum gross density, where 1.2 was allowed and 5.7 was approved. Maximum gross floor area, where 0.14 is allowed and 0.21 was approved. And minimum landscape area ratio, where 0.65 is required and 0.52 was previously approved. When we create this subdivision, some additional variances get created with the two lots. Some existing variances get exasperated, and actually one actually gets reduced. So the rear lot, when we create the subdivision line, will require a variance because it does not have, it does not front any street. So that's a variance for that lot. The maximum gross density gets exasperated from the 5.7 that was approved to 11.5. The maximum gross floor area ratio gets exasperated from 0.21 to 0.29. The minimum landscape area ratio remains, but actually gets improved with the rear lot from 0.52, it goes to 0.64. And those are based on the areas of the lot, that's why they get exasperated. For the lower, or the lot that will be fronting Route 34, similar, the minimum landscape area ratio will get exasperated from 0.52 to 0.45. The density is not applicable to the retail component of the lot, and the gross floor area actually would be in compliance on this lot. The 0.14 is allowed, and I think 0.13 is what will occur after the subdivision.
Now, just as you've described the variances, and they change because you draw the lot line, the actual physical layout of the site, the green space, the density that's on the overall site of the residential, none of that is modified by this application.
That's correct.
All right, you can continue. We'll move on to the
Yeah, that concludes really my description of the site and the subdivision. We are in receipt of environmental resources review letter dated February 1, 2023. We can agree to comply with almost all the comments. There were 4 items we were requesting waivers for providing on the plan, and I'll just quickly go through them as they were enumerated on the review letter. It was item 4B, to show property 200 feet beyond with zones, land uses, street widths, buildings, bridges, etc. Requesting a waiver for that. We don't believe really adds anything to what's before here, just the minor subdivision that we're requesting. Item 4E is providing finished floor elevations and spot grades. Again, we feel this is more of an item that can be handled at an as-built and not pertinent to the minor subdivision being requested. Item 4F, showing all utilities. Similarly, this can be handled as an as-built and really not pertinent to the minor subdivision. And the last one requesting relief on was item 5H in the review letter, was for the identifying all the trees. Again, for the minor subdivision, we don't believe this has any bearing on that request.
Mr. Chair.
Did you say 4H?
4H.
5H was the last one.
Oh, excuse me. Thank you.
Mr. Chair, with regard to those items too, we'll defer to Mr. Dorji. Obviously, if the board finds them acceptable, they're technical in nature, but essentially comply with all the report except for those items, and I would defer to Mr. Dorji if he finds those waivers acceptable. That's how I'd like to proceed in that aspect. I have no further questions for Jerry, it's, rather simple what's going on here. The site's not changing, but I wanted him to show the line. We have to get the variances, on the record. That's important. But he's available to the board and your professionals for any questions you may have.
Thank you, Mr. Clauser. Mr. Darchi?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. First, the waivers that Mr. Cesario had mentioned, I don't have any objection to the granting of those waivers. All those items were provided as part of the overall use variance and site plan application that this board heard, not these members, but this board heard, I guess, what was that, like 4 years ago?
18, 19, and 20.
Yeah, it was drug out over some time, but there were some amendments done during that time period. So I don't have an objection to waiving those items. And then in addition, Mr. Cesario did send me an email, and I was able to glean from that they don't have any objection to the remaining technical comments we have in our review letter. Just a couple of minor things. This kind of application comes in quite often, and I'm sure this board's probably seen it. I know that the planning board has seen it, where you have a shopping center that's developed, or a multi-use development that's been put together, and the developer finds themselves in a position where they have to refinance it or just sell it for transfer purposes, and they do a more or less a financial subdivision. They create variances that look like a long list of ugly variances, but at the end of the day, the development is it actually is the same as what was approved by this board. So in that respect, I don't have any issues. The only things that we need to make sure is that all the issues that maybe arise from the subdivision are buttoned up, things like access and all that, and the utilities. And the applicant has indicated that they're going to prepare all the documents to make sure that those rights between the two properties are clarified and memorialized in some way. The maintenance is one thing that we want to make sure that there's an actual clear access maintained, because we do have a residential development back there, sorry. So we have to make sure that access is maintained and cleared and snow's removed and all that. So obviously that'll be part of that language, I imagine. The last thing that I do want to make sure we get on the record is the phasing that was approved by the zoning board as part of the original site plan approval. There was a specific timing that the board approved, because what we didn't want to happen was we didn't want the residential to get approved and then the commercial to lag behind. So there was specific timing that was approved by the zoning board. And Peter, maybe you can correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe it was something along the lines of you needed to have the one building started prior to getting your first CO.
Yeah, it was number one, just to begin with, there's no request for any relief from the phasing. It's still in place. We're bound by it.
Perfect.
And yeah, I think it was tied to this building's got to be started before you get a CO with the
Right.
apartments. And before
And then
you get
within
the last one, you got to get
right
the
within
other
12
commercial
months, you have to have
building
the
started.
second building started.
Right, yeah.
So that phasing isn't changing, and thank you for placing that on the record. And that's all I had, Mr. Chairman. Like I said, we do have some comments regarding some changes and all that to the plan, the variance items. I'm sure Ms. Coffin's going to address that as part of her testimony. One other thing, just real quick. What's the intention as far as perfecting the subdivision? It's going to be by deed or by plat?
I would suggest a deed.
Okay. I don't have no objection to that. I'm happy to answer any questions the board may have.
The issue we spoke about, it not abutting a street.
Oh,
You know, that everything's got to remain the same, obviously. Suppose they sell off the back part, the residential part. So as a new owner, is it still bound by everything that was in the original resolution?
The original approval? Yeah.
Yeah, and more so than that, the back lot will benefit from easements over the front lot, which is how you get over the lack of frontage on a street. And those easements do run in perpetuity. They are rights to land.
Right.
So-
It would be subject to cross-access easements to get in the rear of the property, right?
Right.
And then also drainage, and obviously all the
All of the other
all the stuff.
things
Basically,
as
your
well.
drainage is handled by stormwater basins on the commercial property and all that. So all that has to be clarified and documented. I'm sorry.
No, go ahead.
Just one other thing regarding perfecting the subdivision, and Ms. Savant, I'm Sorry. Ms. Savins just reminded me, Ms. Shapiro actually sometimes does prefer to have the subdivision perfected by plat, so I'd like to maybe just defer to her rather than us deciding that. So if you could just, maybe discuss that with Nicole.
Sure.
If you can convince her, that's fine.
Yeah, you asked me a preference. I mean, the deed is simple. I think we have to provide some level of a plat in any
Yes.
event. But the actual filing of the map
At the county,
can be
right, your
onerous.
deed.
And
That's what we have been doing. You can file by deed, but the office still requires a plat. And actually, that's a preference by the township attorney, so that, in future, we don't have issues, so.
Yeah, what we've been doing is we show a plat to the town and then we record the deeds, because going to through the process of the map filing law, which is forever changing, and going to the county and getting the map actually filed can be difficult. But we can do either one, whatever Nicole and Vina end up being happy with.
Actually, there was only one comment which I had, and that was related to creating a landlocked parcel, because municipal land use law does not encourage, and I think Ms. Coffin will cover that, because that law mostly pertains to giving emergency vehicles access, and in case of an adversity, they want to make sure that there is proper access to the rear. And I think Ms. Coffin can cover that.
And I'll ask the board to take note that the fireman left. He was okay with it. But yeah, Allison will address that.
Is Ms. Coffin going to testify the issues with regard to the ownership of the management basin as well?
Well, no, I had asked Mr. Friedman that question, that whoever the owner is of the lower lot, the commercial lot, they'll be responsible in perpetuity for the maintenance of the site. That's the plowing of the site and the basin.
Thank you.
And then later, whoever, if the one portion should be sold to another, that's between two businessmen deciding who's going to pay for what. But they're the ones that'll be pigeonholed with it. And then the town always has that backup language that if somebody's not doing what they're supposed to be doing, you can come in and do it and bill them. Yeah. But that's the same with any of your commercial sites out there.
Okay. You having Ms. Coffin come up tonight?
Sure. Yes. Yeah, if you could make-
Oh, hold on, I'm sorry, I didn't even ask my board. Questions of this witness, the professional engineer? No? No, I'm sorry.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
My mistake.
Well, I wanted to get her own by 10, so you didn't kick me out of here.
You just made it.
At the buzzer. At the buzzer. Ms. Coffin, will you swear affirm to testify truth in this matter before the board?
Yes, I do.
Can we have your name again? Just for the record?
Allison Coffin, Coffin.
Just tell the gentleman down at the end who you are.
Hi, my name's Allison. I'm a licensed professional planner in the state of New Jersey. Got certification from AICP, the American Institute of Certified Planners. I've been testifying as a planner in front of boards throughout the state for, 18 years now. Yeah.
So Ms. Coffin appears here
It's my
frequently,
birthday.
and she usually gives a good presentation, so listen up. This is how they should go.
And today's her birthday.
Right.
This is the second time I've spent my birthday with this board.
That's right.
The lives we live.
It was cake last time. It was Sam Rizzo's retirement
Yes,
party.
it was. Yes, it
It
was.
wasn't for me.
Okay, so Allison, if you could just share with the board your analysis of this site and what you did to prepare.
Given the late hour, I'll skip my usual preamble and cut right to the meat.
For quick learners.
Yes.
And listeners.
The real relief that this application needs for the subdivision is from the Municipal Land Use Law, Section 4055D-35, and that states that no permit should be issued for a building or structure unless the lot abuts a street giving access to the proposed building or structure. And Section 36, right after that, lays out the criteria for this relief. And that says where enforcement of Section 35 would entail practical difficulty or unnecessary hardship, or where the circumstances of the case do not require the building or structure to be related to a street, the Board of Adjustment may, upon application or appeal, vary the application of Section 35 and direct the issuance of a permit subject to the conditions that will provide adequate access for firefighting equipment, ambulances, and other emergency vehicles necessary for the protection of health, safety, and that will protect any future street layout shown on the official map or on general circulation plan elements of the municipal master plan. So the relief that's being requested here under that subdivision in this case. The circumstances of this case do not require the proposed rear lot to have direct frontage on a public right-of-way. Safe and adequate access is provided via easement through the front lot. Adequate access for firefighting equipment, ambulances, and other emergency vehicles is provided consistent with the already approved site plan, and there is no impact on any future street layout that results from this subdivision or granting relief under Section 35. So that's the municipal land use portion of this. The second type of relief that's requested for this technical subdivision is technical changes to the variances as they were already granted. The D4 variance for gross floor area, the D5 variance for density, and that minimum landscape ratio as it's now applied to the two new lots. We find ourselves in a situation here where the technical subdivision creates technical changes to what are approved variances. In reality, there's no change to the approved site plan in terms of what will be or has been constructed, only division of this lot into two lots. In other words, the only thing that's changing is a line on the tax maps that will not alter the functioning of this site. So the D and C variance, the relief that's being identified, is consistent with the approved site plan for this property as a whole. The site as it exists and is proposed will be developed as a single lot. The definition of a lot in both the municipal land use law and the township ordinance is a designated parcel, tract, or area of land established by plat or otherwise as permitted by law and to be used, developed, or built upon as a unit. Consequently, while this site will be subdivided into two separate tax lots for the purpose of financing, it will continue to function as a single lot as defined by the MLUL and with adequate frontage on New Jersey Route 34, adequate access, including emergency access to the residential lot, and the requested variances are therefore technical in nature. The proposed subdivision does not alter the ability of the site in its total to accommodate the overall floor area and density that were previously approved and are now proposed. Approval of these variances continue to advance the purposes of the municipal land use law as they were granted previously, the appropriate use and development of the site, sufficient space and an appropriate location for residential and commercial uses, and now encouraging the coordination of various public and private procedures and activities, shaping land development with a view of lessening the cost of development. In this case, it lessens the cost by allowing for better financing for this project to continue forward. These variances do not have any significant adverse impact on your master plan and zoning ordinance, as there is no actual change to what was already approved for the site. So for those reasons, it's my opinion that positive reasons exist for the granting of the requested modified variances and that there's no substantial detriment that would result from them.
Allison, there's a question, and I didn't, or a fact I didn't share with the board. Of the group of us that are here this evening, you were the planner for the original site that was approved.
Yes.
Okay, and you were the planner there in support of the use variance relief to allow the mixed development in the R30 zone.
Yes.
And so the drawing of this, in addition to the other variances that you described, the drawing of the minor subdivision line, that does not in any way change your opinion of the appropriateness of this use, this mixed use in the R30 zone on this site.
Yeah, it has no change.
Mr. Chair, I have no further questions, and Ms. Coffin, she's available.
Ms. Swan?
I don't have any questions.
Mr. Georgie?
I don't have any questions, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Dasty?
No, Mr. Chairman.
Board members to my left? To my right? I'm good.
Okay. Mr. Chair, I appreciate the board, is there, well, we
We're
have
going to ask in a minute, but I
yeah,
don't know.
so go ahead, let's ask, and then I'll.
Let's do it.
Pretty scary.
Yeah.
31-2022Z. This is going to be the public portion. I'm going to open it now. This is located 538 Route 34 for a minor subdivision with a D variance. There is no one else in the courtroom tonight. I don't think the applicant is going to speak against himself, so
Surprised.
seeing no one, I'm going to close the public portion. Back to you, Mr. Klauser.
All right, so thank you, Mr. Chair and members of the board. I'm sorry, Ms. Swan, do you?
Mr. Klauser, I think we should put it on record that you had also applied for the uses
Oh, I'm sorry, I did that off the
because-
record.
Yes, because I think it's important. There were a few residents that had called with interest, and I had assured to them that we're going to bifurcate the application, and this is going to be only for minor subdivision, and they will have an opportunity to come and participate when we come for the uses.
So, yeah, Mr. Chair.
You put that on the record,
And to uncomplicate the matter, we're going to go and meet, I've already asked for a meeting, and then I'll ask that we be put back on the agenda to handle that issue. I'll notice for that. I'm not going to ask you to make an announcement for that this evening. When we have that new date decided that it's appropriate, I'll provide a notice for that. So, yeah, I'll put that on the record. I think it just uncomplicates the issue if we handle it that way.
So, Mr. Dasty, we would still maintain the same application number?
Yeah, it's just a bifurcated application, so
Right.
he's here now in the minor sub, and you'll have to come back for the use.
Yeah.
Right.
This is more important. It's all important. This is important, timely. That's why we want to move forward with this. So, as I was saying, thank you, Mr. Wong, for getting that on the record. I appreciate the board in indulging this application, understanding it, and listening to the testimony this evening. It is technical in nature. This site is under construction. It's going to be operating and functioning. This will help it do that. So I would ask that the board act favorably on the application, including the minor subdivision and the variance relief requested.
Thank you, Mr. Clauser. Mr. Dasty, we would take votes on the D4, D5, or no? It's changing the floor area ratio.
Yeah, I think we need a
That are,
D1.
that are
the
triggered
density.
by the
Right.
subdivision, right, correct.
So it's D4, D5, minimum landscape. And the
D4,
subdivision.
D4, D5, and the subdivision, we hold off from the D1,
Oh, I
and then the minimum landscape area ratio.
On this one?
Yes.
Right, okay, so it's 3, yeah. Okay, D4, D5, minimum landscape.
Yes, sir.
Board members, everybody good? Anybody got any questions? Go ahead.
Just a point of order. If I never came back for uses, because we're making the lots smaller, don't you think they should vote in that respect on the D1? I mean, wouldn't it be safer just to have that on the record? You're not granting any
you're-
use except what was permitted.
Well, there's already been testimony, but you're
So what
coming
is
back for a D1, right?
Well, we're
You're
going to come back for an
bifurcating.
interpretation of uses that are permitted, maybe additional uses. But just in a minor subdivision, when you make a use smaller, I think it triggers a D1, just in and of itself, regardless of the actual use that. And I don't want to,
Because of the intent.
just because of the
I think he's
intensity.
right.
I just think it's safe
think
if
so.
that's included and then it
1,
doesn't.
4, and 5?
And I think the resolution should specifically say that it
Just
is
for that
the
purpose.
electricity.
Yeah, the resolution for this.
If that gets thrown out the window, I don't want to not be able to perfect the minor because we didn't technically get a D1. That's my only thought. Thank you.
1, 4, and 5 then.
Yes, thank you very much.
Minor subdivision. Okay. Board members, any questions yet? No? None?
And just understand, for Mr. Izzo and the board members, the D variances are only triggered because they already have a use variance, and they're just making they're making one big lot into 2 smaller lots, right?
Yeah, this is on Route 34 as you go down, if you're going south, it's on the right-hand side. It was a number of years ago when this originally came up. You can see the build already for the commercial and the apartment structures in the back. I haven't been down that way in a little while, but I guess it's still moving on.
Yes.
So, yeah, okay, so many of us are aware of that, and I'm glad to see that it is moving along. So that's what's going on. Nothing's changing. They may come back and ask for different uses in the commercial entity in the front, because they're going to be storefronts. So all we're doing is subdividing, giving permission for subdivision, all right? And it just triggers these other use variances, okay? So we're going to take, there's 3 use variances, D1, D4, which is floor area ratio, which triggers, and D5 for density, correct, Mr. Clauser?
That's correct.
Okay, let's vote on D1. Does anybody?
What's that? Do you have any sense?
Hopes yesterday. All right, let's vote on D1 use variance. Someone want to move that?
I'll move it, Connor.
All right, I'll second. Roll call, please.
Mr. Connor,
Yes.
Mr. Stoner,
Yes.
Mr. Scogno,
Yes.
Ms. Andrews?
Yes.
Ms. Testaverde?
Yes.
Mr. Izzo?
Yes.
Chairman Sullivan?
Yes, for all the reasons mentioned on the record. D4 for floor area ratio, also triggered by the subdivision. Someone want to move that?
I'll move it, Stoner.
Ms. Testaverde and Mr.
Second.
Stoner, seconds. Roll call, please.
Mr. Connor?
Yes.
Mr. Stoner?
Yes.
Mr. Scogno?
Yes.
Ms. Andrews?
Yes.
Ms. Testaverde?
Yes.
Mr. Izzo?
Yes.
Chairman Sullivan?
Yes. D5 for density.
I'll move it.
Second, Stoner.
Ms. Testaverde and Mr. Stoner. Roll call, please.
Mr. Connor?
Yes.
Mr. Stoner?
Yes.
Mr. Scogno?
Yes.
Ms. Andrews? Ms. Testaverde?
Yes.
Mr. Izzo?
Yes.
Chairman Sullivan?
Yes, minor subdivision, right?
Yes, sir.
Someone move it?
Move it, Connor.
Second, Stoner.
Moved in second. Roll call, please.
Mr. Connor?
Yes.
Mr. Stoner?
Yes.
Mr. Scogno?
Yes.
Ms. Andrews? Yes. Ms. Testaverde?
Yes.
Mr. Izzo?
Yes.
Chairman Sullivan?
Yes, minimum landscape area ratio.
I'll move it, Stoner.
Mr. Stoner, second.
Connor.
Roll call, please.
Mr. Connor?
Yes.
Mr. Stoner?
Yes.
Mr. Scogno?
Yes.
Ms. Andrews? Yes. Ms. Testaverde?
Yes.
Mr. Izzo?
Yes.
Chairman Sullivan?
Yes.
And there were also 3 waivers, I think, right?
They were just from the report. I don't know if you vote on those. I don't think, no?
No, they're just coming out, right.
Yeah, I think that just ends up in the resolution.
Thank you. If we're playing beat the clock, you won.
Thanks for hanging around.
Okay.
I knew we could do it.
I'm glad to see the project is moving forward, and best of luck to you, sir. Okay? Mr. Clauser, thank you.
I know. You're aging yourself.
We got to, listen, I have mirrors in my house. I can't change what it is. I'd like to, but I can't. Board members, before we close business, there is no one here in the public, so I don't have any public comments tonight. Anybody on the left want to make any comments? None? Good. Getting used to, yeah, it'll come, it comes a little at a time, then all of a sudden it just hits you right in the head. Mr. Scogno, good? Mr. Stoner? Mr. Connor? Ms. Andrews and Ms. Testaverde, no? Everybody's good? And from the township? Anything? Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Dasty. Someone want to move for the adjournment?
Aye.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? We stand adjourned. Thank you, everybody, for being here.